All right, so calling the meeting to order. We did have a need for executive session to go over some student discipline matters and one personnel matter. At this time, Mr. Gelsinger, if you'd lead us in pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if we could go to roll call, Mr. Mummer?
Mrs. Bauer.
Here.
Mr. Beard.
Here.
Mrs. Brennan.
Here.
Mr. Galzella.
Here.
Mr. Gelsinger.
Here.
Mr. Leidy.
Here.
Mr. Plessick.
Here.
Mr. Smith. Here. Mrs. Weaver.
Here.
9 present, 0 absent.
All right, and as usual, we have a fairly decent stack of visitors tonight, pretty full room. They're still filing in, as a matter of fact. Do we have any additions, modifications, or deletions to the agenda at this time?
Yes, we do. Modification to item 8, 4A3. Mrs. Lori Keith, through transcript verification, her salary should be adjusted to $59,784, which is a master step 1. And the other modification is, excuse me,
That was 8E, I'm sorry, 8A3, correct?
8, 4A3.
Oh, 8, 4, 8, 3.
Yeah, Lori Keith.
8A3.
8, 4. Keep going.
Okay.
And then
Got
the next one is 8D1. And that is a recommendation to, actually, we are going to, Mr. Muhammad, I believe the correct term is scrap the bus. Originally, it was going to be donated to the Hanover Area Fire and Rescue, but there were issues with the title conversion. So we are going with the original recommendation of scrapping the bus for whatever dollars that would bring to the district. So that modification would be to, recommendation to authorize the scrapping of bus 86, or,
The technical term.
yeah, I don't, it's not the legal term, but discarding.
There you go.
Yeah. So those are the only 2 modifications.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dr. Burkhart. Now we will go on to hearings of persons to wish to address the board. I have several here. I'd like to start with allowing Pastor March to take the microphone. And he wanted to deliver a bit of a prayer, I believe. I'm not sure.
Well, thank you guys for welcome and prayer to be in this room tonight. It's a great honor to stand here and pray over this board on behalf of God. So if we could, can we just bow our heads? Heavenly Father, we thank you for this night. We thank you, Father, for this board that you have placed here, Lord God, representing our children, representing this school district, representing this community. We just ask, Father, you would give them a supernatural wisdom, a supernatural anointing, Lord God, to hear from you, Lord God, to call those shots, Lord. Lord, you would just place inside them, Lord, that they would have a reverent, respectful fear of God, Lord God, and not a fear of man, to make decisions, Lord God, that would move your kingdom, Lord God. We ask, God, tonight that you would just give them the keys of the kingdom, the keys of your kingdom, that they would loose on this earth what you have already loosed, Lord God. Let your glory flow, let your anointing flow, and let your spirit have its way, Lord God. Bless them for this time, the time that they give to this, Lord God. Bless them and strengthen them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Sharon Reed.
Thank you. I'm Sharon Reed. I understand that I have to say
how I'm actually here. I'm a taxpayer and a resident, and all 6 of my children have gone to Southwest. I would like to address the policy 711 and also that goes along with it, the 103 discussion. The purpose of having policies and procedures is to ensure student access to facilities and programs that are best for learning. The existence of a particular individual should not be the foundation for any policy and should not be used to focus on a particular protected class of people. So I ask, are we reviewing these policies because there have been specific incidents here in the Southwestern School District, or to narrow the access and protections of a group of individual students? Eliminating or changing the bathroom or discrimination policies criminalizes a protected class of people and prevents them from fully participating in the school environment. We should develop and enforce policy based on demonstrated need, not to further hysteria or discrimination. Each student is guaranteed a free and appropriate public education, and we need to focus on safety, not the comfort of individuals or the impetus to calm hysteria and discrimination. The safety of cisgendered students is not more important than the safety of trans students. There is no data from any peer-reviewed source, including law enforcement documentation, that indicate any increase in assaults when bathrooms are provided according to gender identity. However, there is a wealth of information regarding assault and sexual harassment to trans and non-binary individuals using bathrooms not according to gender identity. The Virginia case that's been brought up a couple times at board meetings as a demonstration that bathrooms based on gender identity are dangerous. The courtroom documentation revealed that the male in question was not dressed as a woman. He was wearing a kilt and not a skirt. He did not identify as trans and was the boyfriend of the female student who had invited him to enter the bathroom on several occasions, and that came from the courtroom documentation. The assumption that sex-segregated bathrooms protect women and children from physical assault is flawed in 2 ways. First, sex-segregated restrooms only serve as a barrier to physical assault if one's attacker is of the opposite sex. Secondly, if someone is already willing to break laws and policy to commit criminal assault, it is likely that that person will break another law or policy to enter a woman's restroom with little or no hesitation. In January of 2023, a federal court found, and this is a quote from the judge, quote, "The Constitution is not a vehicle to compel discrimination. For public schools to function, one student or family's belief cannot provide a basis to exclude another student from full participation in the school environment. Nothing in the Constitution guarantees that parenting rights, equal protection, or the free exercise of religion mandates that transgender students be excluded from gender-appropriate communal restrooms," unquote. Removing protections for this class of students does not represent the core values of this district. The district has stated emphatically in policies that it will provide equal opportunity so students can achieve their maximum potential. That discrimination of any kind is inconsistent with the rights of students and the educational and programmatic goals of this district, and all are prohibited. So in closing, please be aware that no school district or school board in any of the 50 states has ever been held liable for any activity related to the implementation of policies supporting gender identity. However, in every state, school boards and districts have been found liable for not implementing policies that support gender identity, resulting in millions of dollars in penalties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Next would be Mr. Stephen Carr. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on agenda-related items at this time? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to, I'm sorry? All right, so on to 8A1. If Mr. Smith, you want to,
I'm making a recommendation to approve number 1, number 2, 8A, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Second.
okay, so Matt Smith on the motion, Mr. Gelsinger on second. Any discussion?
I can explain it briefly if you'd like to.
Yep.
There's a lot on
Okay.
there, so there's a couple FMLA with 2 teachers there. We also have creation of another personal care assistant based on student needs, which follows federal law as far as accommodations. There's some new substitutes, and let's see, there's 3 that we definitely can't skip past. So let me scroll down to that. Resignations at the end of this school year. Paul Zeroth, 25 years in teaching. So that's quite an accomplishment there. Molly D. Wiles, German world language teacher, Southwestern High School, 32 years teaching, 31 years at Southwest. That is quite an accomplishment as well. Let me scroll down to the 3rd one. Dana M. Beeling, mathematics teacher, Southwestern High School, 34 years teaching and 28 at Southwest. So those are all really, really good accomplishments there. It's sad to see them go at the end of this year, but, you know, they're ready to retire. So that's all I have on that one.
Okay, we need a roll call vote?
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy.
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, moving on to our agenda 8B1. I'll forward over to Ms. Bauer.
Yes, I'm going to break these out. First, we'll do 8B1. It's a recommendation, enter into an agreement with Lincoln Intermediate Unit to participate in the Lincoln Learning Network. It's an increase in their bandwidth.
Okay, there's a motion, any second?
Second.
So motion by Bauer, second by Mr. Smith. Any discussion? I'll just add that we upped our gigabytes per second and lowered our price for that, if I read correctly.
Yeah, it was doubled.
Right.
The bandwidth was doubled.
Bandwidth was doubled,
Yeah, I read the contract. Good deal.
right? So we garnered some savings there, so. All right, roll call vote, Jeff?
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
And then 8B2 is a recommendation to approve the 22-23 budget transfers in the amount of $1,051,200.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Bauer, second by Mr. Smith. Discussion?
And I'd like to ask Mr. Furman to come up and speak to this, please.
Good evening. Jeff has pulled up the documents that I had attached to the board agenda. I thought it might be easier for us to look at them up on the board than trying to go through the papers. And I have Dwayne's handy dandy little clicker here. Okay, the first page you're looking at there is, this is actually from our financial statements. And these transfers happen, they occur every year when we go to approve the financial statements, when they're ready to be printed. And this is a page from the financial statements, which are going to be presented at the next board meeting, at the 24th board meeting. So this is a page from the financial statements. At the top here, this is all revenues. And what you're seeing here is this column here is the original budget for revenues. Same thing for the final column. We didn't make any changes there. This column here is our actual revenues and this is for the 22-23 school year. So our revenues came in over budget of $3.6 million. So we budgeted 79.8, revenues were 83.4. So 3.6 million over our budget. Next section down, Jeff, you want to scroll down? This is our expenditures. And the expenditures are listed showing on a functional basis. So obviously you see regular programs, special programs, et cetera. This column here is our original budget. So for regular programs, we budget 36,841,000. This column here is our actual expenditures for the year. So you can see we budgeted 36,841,000. Our actual expenditures were 36,185,000. And you can see that for all the other functional areas there. Total expenditures, 81,510. They are over our budget of $79 million. If you go to the next page, Jeff. This page here is showing that, again, per that prior page, we had some areas that were over budget and some that were under budget. And all we try to do here with this page is cover those areas that were over budget with the areas that were under budgeted. So again, you'll see here regular programs. We were under budget by this number, so we could transfer some of that money out to help cover special programs, vocational, other instructional areas, et cetera. Same thing with instructional staff services. Under budget by 39, so we could use some of that money to cover other areas that were over budget. Same thing with business services and so on and so forth. If you go to the next page, this is probably the most important page of all of these documents. This is showing those areas where we transferred money into to cover the original budget. So the original budget was 11,341, transferring $149,000 into this to cover that, to bring the final budgeted number up to 11,490. The reasons we were over budget, I listed them all here. Again, some items were over by a little bit less, or a little bit more, but these are the main areas. 408,776 for personal care assistants. We added 8, 10, 12. There was a good number of personal care assistants we added last year, just again, because of the need. And then all of these, Social Security, retirement, health insurance, that's all associated with those individuals that we added that weren't budgeted for. And again, as I think most of the board realizes, when those, just like tonight, we approved one of those positions. And when they come up, we have no choice but to approve them. So that's what drove some of the costs there. This line here in gray, you'll see that a couple different areas, Lincoln Benefit Trust, health insurance activity. With our health insurance program, if our expenditures exceed what we put into that program, we have to record an expense on our books. So that's what this is showing here. And what we do is we break that expense down based on overall costs for the different function areas. So it's an allocation type of a cost. It's not actual costs that we know for special program. It's just allocated out to the different functional areas based on the health insurance expenses for the year. So you'll see this $107,000 for special programs, vocational programs, $18,000. Administrative services, $51,000, and there's $12,870 for people services. Those are just some of the reasons why those areas were over budget. The LIU, the Schedule A payments. We were actually under our budgeted amount by $1 million. But what happens at the end of the year is they send us a report that says, these should be charged to special programs. Some of your Schedule A should be charged to another program. Some of your Schedule A should be charged to pupil health services. We don't budget it there because we don't know at that time where that actual expenditure is going to come in at. So we budget under $1,200. So again, you see under pupil health services, $73,000. That was a portion of that had to come out of the 1,200 function and go under the pupil health services. So that's what those two in the dark shading are. Again, under special programs, some of our tuitions were over our budgeted amount. And then some of our other professional services that we run. And again, with special programs, it's really difficult to budget for those. And again, when those costs come in, we have to spend them. There's no choice that we have in that matter. Going down the vocational programs, you'll see we were over budget in that area. Part of it was the Lincoln benefit cost. Part of it was salaries were over budget. And this was because we had a teacher in this function. They did a degree change. So we don't know what that degree change is when we're going through to do the budget. So basically what happened is on the salary schedule, they moved from, say, a master's to a master's plus 15 or a master's plus 30. It's additional cost. We budget for that, but we budget for it under the 1100 regular programs. And again, sort of the same thing. It's all budgeted under 1100, and that's why we can transfer some funds out of 1100 into 1300 to help cover that. Lincoln Edge tuition here for other instructional programs over budget by about $60,000. I think that all is based on the number of students. We have more students, we have more costs. We have less students, obviously less cost. This one here for pupil personnel services, the mental health grant. The nice thing about that is we were over budget in this area, but we actually received funds to cover that $28,000. So it is a wash. But again, we didn't budget for anything in here because we didn't know we would be spending it out of that. But it is a wash to the overall budget. We received $28,000. The expenditure went into here. We're covering that again out of regular programs. Administrative services, I already talked about the Lincoln Benefit Trust. Same thing down here with pupil health. This $25,000 is made up of substitutes and just some overages with some of our aides. Operation and maintenance, electricity costs were higher than anticipated. Central support services, we had new copier leases last year. There's a new accounting pronouncement that came out last year. Basically, what would usually happen with copier leases is we wouldn't have to show this expenditure. It would be yearly we would show that expenditure. But with the new pronouncement that came out, we have to show that all in 1 year. So that's what you're seeing there at $258,000 for those copier leases. We're actually, this is one of those types of expenses. That's a book expense. The actual expense happens every month. We're paying for those copier leases, but we have to show that total because this new accounting pronouncement, we have to show the total in the first year. So that's why you see the 258 there. Community services, again, with the rec commission, we have to show that activity on our books. We don't budget for it because we have no idea what that activity will be. So that's what's shown there. The Title I expenses, $89.90. We received that money in under our title programs. So again, that's a wash for there, but it did drive the overall cost for that function over budget. And then the final one here at the bottom was the new bond interest. We weren't going to borrow the money till the spring of 23, but as y'all, if you remember, the interest rates at that time started to go up. Our folks came to us, our bond folks came to us and said, we should really borrow that money in the fall of 22. Well, what happened? You borrow the money in the fall of 22, a payment is due within 6 months. So we didn't have this payment budgeted for, and that's what happened. We saved money because our interest rates are lower than they would have been if we would have waited till the spring of 23 to do the borrowing. So that's what you see with this here. So the grand total of all the transfers is $1,051,000. Again, it's just a transfer from those functional areas that were under budget to those that were over budget. We're not adding any money to the budget. Overall, we were over our budgeted expenditures. If you go back to the first page, you will see right there, we were $1,534,000 over budget plus the $580 in transfers. So our overall expenditure budget was over by about $2 million. Again, part of the drivers for that were, if you look here, you'll see this $1,143,000 transportation costs. Our contracted transportation was $800,000 over budget. And that's mainly because of the special ed students that we have to transport to whatever institution they go to. We would transport a student from Baltimore up every day. We don't have the personnel and the vehicles to cover that, so we contract that out. And it was just a really large number this year. And again, the other one that you see that's over budget is because of the bond issue.
Can you give us an idea how many students that is?
I
Just
couldn't,
ballpark, like we're talking
yeah. Brian would probably know that better than I would.
173 students we spent $1 million on?
And I will tell you, we're going to be over budget again in the current year we're at. I already looked at it. We're $64,000 over budget, and we haven't even gotten the bills for December yet.
That was gonna be my next comment as far as the personal care people that we were over budget for. I see an increase coming in that in the year,
Yeah.
so I hope we're budgeting, I'd say at least a 15% increase
Well,
in that area.
that's what Jeff and I were talking about. We need to budget for extra bodies.
Yeah.
From that, because we know that there's going to be staff added for personal care.
Yeah,
assistants.
we just have to. And then the other question I had is the budget overage we had for the printers. You said we pay that each month, so why didn't we budget properly for that?
Well,
You see those-
that is an accounting function. That $258,000 isn't an actual, we didn't write a check to the
Yeah, yeah.
copy company for, it's a budgeted number. And again, that all had to do, when we prepared the budget, that pronouncement wasn't in place yet.
Oh, it wasn't, okay, gotcha.
So now that we knew that the
Knew about
pronouncement's
what
in
it was.
place,
I see.
now the next time we go for copy releases in 5 years, we'll know we should budget an amount in there because we're going to have to cover that as an expenditure wise.
Did the student transportation costs also include the purchase of the new buses?
Yes, that was another reason they were over budget, because that was about, I think I actually have it in my notes here. What is that?
That was a lot.
85,000. So that was another part of that.
So now we own some buses. Hopefully that saves us a little bit next year.
Well, we got rid of 3 buses. We bought 3 buses and we,
Oh, yeah.
the one tonight and then 2 others we
Right.
traded in. So you really
Right.
didn't gain anything there. But yes, the buses were $85,000 over budget.
So if most of that increased transportation cost is related to a certain population of students, are there any alternatives to that
No, we have to transport that.
rather than contract it out? What if we do it ourselves?
We would do it ourselves if we
Yeah.
had the personnel and if we had the vehicles to do so. But we don't have the staff. The IU would be our second choice, and the IU doesn't have enough staff. So we're down to contracting out at this point in time. That's why in the past, we never really contracted out other than through the IU. So we really never budgeted for contracted services, and to go from essentially 0 to $800,000 or 700,000, whatever that number was, is a pretty significant jump. Now you'll see when we go through the budget process this year that you'll see a chunk of money in there for contracted transportation. Well, we haven't done that in the past because we weren't doing that in the past. Now we are, and so you're going to see it budget for. Just like what Doug was saying about the PCAs. You know, we may be budgeting for 5 or 10 positions. We don't know how many are going to be asked for next year. This has been something that over the last couple of years, we've seen a significant increase in new positions being created because of those special needs kids. And so, you know, we're going to put some numbers together to put something in there to try to account for that. And you'll see a lot of that as we go through the budget process coming up next couple months.
So notice to the public, we're hiring bus drivers and you can drive a van. It doesn't have to be a bus. We're paying
And
pretty
all the-
good
all
for it,
the time.
actually.
We're always hiring bus drivers and van drivers. Right,
Doug,
Brian?
do
Brian's
we,
back there. If you're interested, see him.
There you go.
um,
And if we were to do it in-house, the cost of those big passenger vans was really prohibitive, if I remember right.
Well, the vans themselves that we bought this year, those prices went up significantly. I think we ended up paying about 50 or 40,000, 50.
They were minivans that we bought this year. The full-size yellow vans you normally see driving around there, they were about 80,000.
Yeah,
next year.
Okay.
So it's like everything else with inflation this year, everything was up and it was significant. Now we're hopeful that this year the buses won't cost, I mean, they're not going down in price. I mean, I can't expect them to go down. I mean, they were $125,000 pop last year. Before that, they were 96, 97. That was a 25% increase in
Mhm.
cost. So it's kind of hard to factor that in. I mean, we did increase the budget from the year before, but $4,000 or $5,000. We didn't increase it by $25,000 plus.
Okay.
So
I think I remember from the first time we did the budgeting. Is there an option to offer to the families whose children we are paying contractors to pick up, to pay the families to drive their children? I know it's not feasible for every working family. I'm not saying that
yes,
it
and we
is.
do.
We do offer that
Yeah.
still.
We had 2 last year that took us up on that.
Okay,
And they get paid the IRS mileage rate.
yes.
And they
okay.
submit paperwork, and we have the same type of requirements as far as have to have insurance in the vehicle, have to have, registration, that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Is that paperwork a heavy lift for them, or is that pretty easy?
For them, relatively easy. All they're doing is
Okay.
filling out a sheet, a
Okay.
paper they want paid, they're filling out the sheet.
Right.
So I'm not paying them without a sheet, so.
Right.
Mr. Furman, I just got one thing. For the community out there, can you explain why we would be responsible to transport kids from Baltimore to our school district, how that ends up being on our budget?
It all has to do with the federal laws with homeless students. That student that I know of is a homeless student, and we're transporting them. I think I just talked to Brian from down below Owings Mills up here every day. And it all has to do with federal laws regarding homeless students and where they have to be transported from and to. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's what we have to do.
And who does the taxpayers need to contact if they want to complain about that?
I'm not even sure who.
Good luck.
State legislators?
No, it's federal.
It's a
That's
federal law,
Congress.
yeah. That's federal law.
Yeah, there's actually, well, from what Keith said, there's federal laws and state laws that say, within our district, we have students that go to schools in other districts. So we don't have enough drivers for them. So I was talking to Brian on Monday. I was down at transportation checking everything out. And we have a contract with KT with certain vans to take certain students different places. So we have some in Spring Grove, some in New Oxford, some in West York. And then otherwise they come the other direction too for LIU programs. But if it's a student in our district, we have to pay by federal law to transport them. So, and yeah, we're still short on drivers. So we are hiring drivers all the time.
Any other questions?
That was very thorough. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome.
So that was a recommendation. So at this point, we need a roll call vote, I believe, for, what number are we on? 8B2, thank you.
Mrs. Brennan,
Here, yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, moving on to 8C1 Programming Committee, Mrs. Weaver.
Okay, I'd like to break these into two, please. The first is a recommendation to approve the agreement between Southwestern School District and Specialized Education of Pennsylvania Incorporated to provide behavioral, social, emotional, and special education services for students attending High Road School of York for the 2023-2024 school year, effective August 21st, 2023 until May 31st, 2024. The tuition rate shall be $173 per day per student, up to 8 students. For additional students, the tuition rate will be $205 per day per student, attachment included.
Second.
Okay, motion, Ms. Weaver, second, Mr. Lady. Discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's go to a vote.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
The next item on the agenda this evening is a discussion regarding the Southwestern School District Brand Unity Proposal. There was an attachment to this if you were able to access the agenda from online. And I believe we have the author of this here this evening as well. I've had the opportunity to speak with him prior to this coming up about this, and we're presenting it for discussion this evening. So the
Right.
motion is for discussion, correct?
Correct.
Second.
Okay, so motion, Ms. Weaver, second, Mr. Leidy. Discussion. Do we have our creator? Yep, that'd be you. Would you, yep, that'll work. If you want to just run us through it, I appreciate that.
All right, good evening, and thank you for inviting me in to speak. This is something, well, let me first introduce myself. I'm Tyler Sig. I'm a 17-year teacher here in the district. Been here a while, so this is something that kind of came about when I was doing my admin internship back in the fall of 2019. I had some preliminary discussions with Dr. Burkhart about it. He seemed to like the idea of it. I'm not sure how it got this far this quickly, but it's just something, it's just a proposal. It's just an idea. It's something that I feel as a school and as a teacher, we should really look into to try to bring everybody back to kind of the same page and try to reunite the entire district from top to bottom. So I'm at the high school level, so I see everything from the top down. And some of the stuff that I've been seeing lately, there seems to be some disjointed ideas and standards and expectations. So the idea with this is to try to reunify things K to 12. So again, I'm lensing it from top down. So this is only my perspective. It's only a proposal. It's really intended just to be a starting point with something like this, and it needs a lot of discussion, a lot of research, and a lot of talk. So I'll just run you through it kind of quickly. Here's my idea. So can you go to the next slide? So, in the proposal, these are the four kind of main tenements of it that I've, over the years, have kind of thought long and hard on. Like I said, I had the opportunity of doing my internship a couple years ago, so I was able to spend some time at each level, and it was a amazing experience. I learned a lot. The people I got to work with were fantastic, and everybody here at the district does a really good job. But the one thing I did notice was what I said before. Each level kind of works in their own little vacuum. At least that's what I'm seeing. Again, I'm kind of the last stop on the bus, essentially, before our kids go out into the real world. And, we're trying to prepare them to go out into the real world. So some of the stuff that I'm seeing at the upper levels, I think we can, if we work together a little bit, we can work some of the issues and problems out before they get to that level and better prepare the kids for life after high school. So anyhow, there's some other things that go along with it, but it all kind of goes together. So hopefully everybody can kind of follow my thought process. But first and foremost is taking a good hard look at our core values and our identity. I'll get into that in the next slide. The history of Southwest is pretty impressive. I am not a Southwestern alumni. I'm actually a Gettysburg alumni. I almost wore my Gettysburg shirt tonight because it actually goes into this whole idea. But anyhow, so aligning that stuff, the core values from top to bottom, that's part of it. I think the other thing is engaging students and really getting them to buy into the Mustang way. We've really, the apathy and just kids just seem disconnected. I don't know if it's a COVID thing. I don't know what it is. They're good kids, but they just seem to be lost. A lot of them do. So I think that's something else, is to kind of bring back that school pride and that whole idea. The other thing is to evolve. Our history is really good, but I don't think anybody can disagree that the demographics, just our school is evolving. It's changing. It's way different than what it was a couple years ago. We're getting different types of kids. We're getting different families. We're becoming, I think, more transient a little bit. So it's changing. Doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I think we just need to kind of evolve some of that stuff as we go. So we want to strengthen that school culture. That's another goal. And the last one there is, like I said, recreate that kind of Mustang pride. So, and again, this is just a proposal. So next slide. So I have started to reach out to some people to try to nail down the history and go through it. It is a pretty fascinating history when you start to talk to some of these people. So I have started to reach out to some people. We do have a very proud tradition here, and that I coached for 10 years. I coached ninth grade football and varsity track and field for 10 years here, for a decade. So coaching with Coach Seidenstricker and with Coach Lee and some of those, being on that end of it, the athletic side of it, there's a lot of pride there. A lot of those people are gone. We have had a lot of transition with some of this stuff, and I feel like we're starting to lose some of that continuity. But at the same time, I feel like we need to kind of remember the past, but evolve into what we are now. So the Mustang itself, the name makes sense. It works on so many levels if you look into it. So for who we are and where we are, it makes a lot of sense as far as why we are the Mustangs. Now, moving into the next slide, please. Here's the thing. You heard me say we need to keep our identity. We need to keep our brand. What is it though? Okay, so here's some of the reasons I think that we really need to take a hard look at this. The first one is, I think overall with the core values is we use that to set our expectations within the classroom, with academics, with athletics. And I'll get to that in the next slide. Rebuild, reunite the culture from top down. The saying, once a Mustang, always a Mustang, is pervasive at the high school. I think that the younger kids should buy into that right away. We want to get them in the loop. My kids go to New Oxford. New Oxford has done something similar to this a couple years ago, and I think it's really paid dividends for that district. They've really kind of shed some different stereotypes and that sort of stuff, and they're really doing some nice things over there. And it's really seems to be unifying the school district over there. My daughters are 9 and 10. They're buying into this stuff. It's really cool to see them linking in and matching up with the high school students, which I know we already do a good job of that. But it's also getting the kids to buy in. So next one is, like I just said, I'm a Gettysburg alum. So I don't know if anybody's in tune with the saga that's going on over there with the lady that was basically trying to extort the districts by claiming that she owned their logo and was trying to use it against them. I think since then everything's kind of worked out, but it was in the papers here over the summer. So I think there we also need to take a look at people trying to infringe on our brand essentially. So essentially what we need to do, I think, is to own our own brand, own our identity for a lot of different reasons. Now there's some examples in there for, I'm a University of Pittsburgh fan, so they've really struggled with their identity over the years. So they've rebranded, and it's been interesting to watch that saga. And now they're kind of back to their old brand for a lot of reasons. So they kind of went with what all the cool kids are doing, and now they're back to kind of their own thing. And I think it's really setting them apart, and they're who they are now. They're not trying to be like anybody else. Next slide, please. All right, so within this presentation, there's 4 proposals. So number 1, the first thing is adopt a new mantra or core value for all students K to 12. And I'll get to that in the next slide. Next one is, and this is going to be an interesting one, I know this is going to be a huge debate, is I am proposing that we make all of our students Mustangs. I'm an outsider coming in. I don't understand Park Hill Packers. I don't understand Vikings. What I really don't understand though is, why is West Manheim the ponies and not the Lions? Can anybody explain that to me? I never understood that. So at any rate, I'm not here to knock any of that stuff, but the intel that I got with that is that came from like youth football, and the coaches just picked names and that's what stuck. So anyhow, the third thing that I would like to propose is that we adopt or standardize all of our primary and secondary logos. And then the last one is adopt primary and secondary, or sorry, all colors. So third, I think I got those backwards. Adopt all of our primary and secondary colors is the third one. And then number 4 is logos. And I have something there. So I'll quickly go through it because I know you guys are busy and you have a lot of stuff. So if you go to the first slide here. So as some of you guys know, I was in the military. I was in the Navy. Our core values were honor, courage, and commitment. So everything we do, that's what everything was supposed to line off of. So here's where this kind of comes from for me. So every great organization out there has core values, and everybody uses those to kind of lead everybody in that organization top down. Okay. So if you go to the next page, here's my proposal. Now, this is kind of where everything started. And I, to be honest with you, I stole this from the middle school. The middle school's already doing this. Now, I changed it. I think, the I. They have include everybody, but I changed it to inspire others because I wanted the leadership aspect. So, and I really like the acronym STRIVE. I like it for kids. I like it for pretty much everybody because every day I'm striving to do my best. Doesn't mean I'm going to do my best every day, but that's what I'm trying to do. So I think it works on a bunch of different levels. So New Oxford has their new thing. It's Charge, which I would have a lot of fun with that in the classroom because I would be playing the da 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 all the time. But here, this one works very well in my classroom. I put it out every year because there are some teachers that use it throughout the district, but these are essentially my core values in my classroom. So anytime I have discipline issues or anything like that with kids, I can pull this out and I can sit down and I can talk to them. And 99% of the time, the kids get it. And it's not a bunch of policy and procedure and that sort of stuff. The kids kind of understand that a lot quicker than pulling out the student handbook. Okay. So at currently, and this all goes back to, I believe it was Ryan Quinn, Brent Barge, and RJ Long. I believe those are the people that got this going at the middle school. So they deserve the credit. But during my time at the elementary school and at the high school, you can see the elementary school uses the acronym STAR, middle school uses STRIVE, high school uses Mustang Manners. Why are we retraining kids at every level? Like there seems to be a lot of like, we're just redoing things. And if I was a kid, it'd be very confusing. So that's kind of my big push here is this one right here. The other stuff really spins off of this. So I think this is the kind of the linchpin to the whole thing is adopting. And again, this is just my idea. We can debate it and change it and do whatever you guys want to do. But I think from K to 12, we really need to have that thing that everybody can look back at, teachers, students, even admin, and go, hey, this is what we follow. So that's my recommendation for that one. I really like the word strive because I think it's unique. I think it's a positive way, and it also to me has kind of a almost an empathy piece to it, or a forgiveness piece. Like, hey, it's okay. You know, you messed up. Let's get back at it the next day. So you're always striving to do your best. So down at the bottom is the definition for strive, and I think I really like the last part, to fight vigorously. Okay, any of you guys that know me, I'm a pretty tenacious person.
Mr. Sig,
So,
Mr. Sig,
yes,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could we move on to, I want to make sure we cover all the different, if you could just go through each slide so we get the main point of each slide.
okay, yep. Go to the next one. All right, so here, this one, like I said, this one's probably going to be the most challenging one. Again, I think every student should be a Mustang. So if each elementary school wants to kind of keep their own be differentiated a little bit, we just roll out different colors. They could be horses of a different color. I know that's probably going to be the biggest hang up. All right, next slide. Primary colors, we pretty much use these. Our official colors are black and white. I propose that we also roll in silver and red as our official secondary colors. Okay, and last slide here, well, one of the last slides. This is another, I think, interesting one. Our brand throughout logos. Dr. Burkhart, when we met, he even said, he goes, oh, SMU. Our logo really does come from SMU. So we had to get permission from SMU to use their logo. But being a coach in the district and all that, like we would go places. Now for track, we would go to Altoona. And it took us going there for years before people finally knew who we were. Because of the name Southwestern, it's pretty nondescript. But I tell you what, our kids went up there and they knew who Southwest was. So getting that brand out there, just solidifying that, I think is important. So that's another recommendation. If you go to the next slide, this was actually one of my graphic students from a couple years ago, and this is also where this kind of comes from. I really liked what he did there because I challenged them all the time. We would have this discussion when we got to the point where they were making logos in there, and I always said, "Hey, redesign a school logo." and this is what he came up with, and I really like these ideas. The one on the left, it's just the horse heads, so it keeps kind of that history and tradition. I like that one because all of our colors there. It's different, it's unique. It also promotes diversity and teamwork. The one on the right needs a little bit of tweaking. The proportions are off, so it needs a professional touch. But I think that would still put the Southwestern name out there and still have the horse logo in there as well. So again, that's just a example. And final thoughts, it just goes back through everything that I was going over. So again, just a proposal, just an idea. You guys can.
I did want to make sure we gave the board opportunity to respond to any of your ideas, just to make sure you're steering in the right direction. I think I'll start off by saying I appreciate your time and development into this. You're definitely vested in looking at this. I do have initial concerns with rebranding each school and the cost involved with uniforms and athletics. That's really hard hurdle to get over. I do think it's worth looking at expanding a motto that each school can adopt, so we have that throughout all our schooling, because there's a continuity without losing identity at each level. I personally, I think much like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts have different levels of achievement, Browning, my wife will correct me on all the levels, but
Daisy.
yeah, Brownie, Daisy,
Cadets,
right.
junior,
So
yeah.
you have that stepping as you go. It's a coming of age, and I think that's important to retain. But I do think we could, one, we should look at owning our own mottos and our own logos for sure. That's a very important consideration for sure. But that's my thoughts.
Oh, yeah, I have a couple ideas as well. I love the idea. I'm always looking for ideas to inspire our kids, keep them involved. That being said, my first obviously idea is the financial burden. And, in the market right now, we just went over how far over budget we are. So, this would clearly be a long-term thing. So another comment that I have is the distinction between the Star, Strive, and Mustang Manners. While I do understand and I love the Strive logo that you've gone with, while I do understand trying to create in continuity, each one of those are kind of geared towards their level, and they get kind of old. So there is some benefit in starting over fresh with a new idea. So you've done Star for 5 years. It's a little stale. You don't see it as exciting anymore. Move on to Strive. So there are some benefits to that as well, although I like the Strive outlook probably a little better. I don't know how it will relate to elementary schoolers quite as well. Similar to, in elementary school, they do, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. And then the next time they do something different because you have to keep that refresh, or else it gets old. I love the idea of coal, fire, and steel. Obviously, it has a history in Pennsylvania and a culture here as far as the coal mines and stuff like that, and sticking with those colors. That's a great idea. And as far as the overall unity of it, I think that is what we need to build on and figure out a way around it. Maybe leaving some out, maybe bringing some more in. The one thing that I have a comment on there is that, the one logo you included in there, that the logo was set up about diversity. Well, that's the opposite of what this is. We're trying to unite everyone as a Mustang. This is unity here, and you're going to add in diversity. So wouldn't include that next time. Kind of a turn off for me. Just to give you an example, there's a recent interview with Raven Simone, and she kept being questioned about her background, and she said, "I'm an American," and I think that's what unites us, and that's where we ought to focus as a school as well.
Thank you.
And I also appreciate both your incorporation of your personal background as well as the admin internship experiences and the research. Clearly took a lot of time to develop this. In conceptualizing this, I too have to default to the financial aspects of it. And I'm wondering if you've started to conceptualize any kind of 5-year plan, if you've talked to the boosters, if you've talked to the principals, just to conceptualize if any of this is feasible, how long it would take, again, going back to what Mr. Leidy was saying as it pertains to the presentation we just had regarding budget deficit.
Well, I think the idea is if I don't want to put the work into that if it's going to be a no-go.
Yeah.
I understand the financial end of it, and I think most schools, it's just a phase-out period over a long period of time. I can certainly reach out to my friends at New Oxford and see how they've done it, and I'm pretty sure that's what they did. The teams would just wear their old jerseys, and it would just take time to phase that stuff out. So I don't know how much of a additional cost it would be, other than obviously, like at the middle school, I know the bleachers have Colts and stuff on them. So that type of stuff.
Yeah, I actually
Obviously.
wrote down asking
Yep.
if you had reached out to New Oxford, so.
Yep, I have. I haven't gotten that deep into it though. So that's why I'm presenting it. If it's something we want to tackle and move forward on, then we can do that. My idea was to survey our students, our parents, our alumni, survey people and see if this is a problem that's really worth solving. If it isn't, that's fine. It's just, like I said, it's just an idea. So me personally, I'm looking for that continuity with dealing with students. And that's why I keep coming back to kind of those core values. So I think the idea with the horses is we have, I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but we have all kinds of different color students. They're all Mustangs. So I'm like, that's kind of my idea there with the diversity. So we are all one. So any other questions?
I have,
Go right ahead.
for the logos, I just want to understand, were you thinking about having all the sports be the same logo? Because I saw you had, lot of
Ideally,
different-
yes, but again, that's a bigger conversation, and I don't know where we want to push that to. And I don't know, like in my mind, with the youth organizations and that sort of stuff, we're developing them to compete at the high school level. We want them to be our kids. They're our kids. So that's kind of where, like, I spent time at the middle school and coaching also. Those kids really identify, they hang on to that. And when they get to this level, it's silly, some of the infighting and stuff that you hear. So that's kind of where that comes from with the naming.
so like,
They're hanging on to their elementary names.
right, so I'm not even talking about now. Okay, so I'm not talking about the elementary. Now I'm going to high school.
Oh, high school.
Maybe I should talk about that. The high school, you know how like baseball, you had them up there, baseball or basketball, whatever. And I know because I have magnets all over my car.
Yep.
So are you trying to make all the sports, baseball, soccer, whatever, track, whatever, all the same?
Yes,
So
I mean,
like,
for the most part, this
I
is
mean,
what
they all
we
have
used to
the-
use, and now everything's starting to split. Everybody's starting to do their own thing. And I've noticed that since I've been, I mean, my 17 years, this used to be the only logo that we really used for athletics, and now it doesn't seem to be that way. Now every team is starting to use kind of their own, like baseball team, they just ripped off Western Michigan's logo. Like a lot of our logos are just, if you look at it, you can find them. So there's a couple up there that are just people are taking and using, whether they have permission or not. I
Right.
don't know. I'm
And that's,
assuming they
I
do.
mean, that's another struggle we run into is that you referenced Gettysburg. And I do believe, I also read the same, that it was found unfounded,
Yeah.
it was settled. But it's a real thing. And people want their money for the brain power they put into designing things. We recreated the Mustang, or not, sorry, excuse me, the Viking logo for our t-shirts at Mannheim and removed the physical face of the Viking. And now it's just a big M in our colors, and the teachers all have new shirts and everything because you do run, I mean, it was the Minnesota Vikings logo.
Yep.
So we ran that risk. But my comments for this, in reference to this, I really love the idea of creating the continuity with something like Strive. I know you said it takes a lot of research and it doesn't necessarily need to be Strive. But I will say having kids now at the high school, the middle school, and the elementary school, all starting at one little elementary school and we didn't always do STAR either at the elementary school. That hasn't been, Logan, his 9th grade, did not have STAR in kindergarten.
Yeah, it's changed.
So it is I like this idea that they will understand the expectations of what is expected to them on school property, regardless of what building they walk into. And we can do that without changing the elementary schools. I mean, you can have, that's posters. That's not new uniforms. That's not things like that. That's, you walk into teachers' classrooms and a lot of them have their own expectations on the wall. You will not touch your cell phone. You will not blow your nose in your sleep. Like whatever they write, we could get a poster for the buildings, and that to me is a more cost-effective, easier fix that would unify the district. And I do think for the kids, I understand Justin's point. Everything we do as parents is repeating ourselves over and over again to our children, and we all sound like Charlie Brown's mom at some point. I'm sure of it. But I do think, to what you said, when you pull a child aside to discipline them, and you say, you know our expectations. You have known our expectations since the minute you step foot in this district. It does bring that ownership back on them because, and we do this with our parenting, if the expectations are set, that punishment, they levied that on themselves. You knew the rules. You chose to break the rules. We've made them so clear. We've asked this of you the whole way through. So you may be angry, but there was an understanding from the beginning. And I can see the value to that running through the district. I absolutely can. I agree. I don't have sporty kids. Some days I'm really excited about that. Some days I'm not. But I do know that our little munchkins at the elementary schools are very, very proud to wear their colors and play their football and shake their pom-poms and play the basketball and all the things. And I love every minute of it. So I do understand the autonomy to that for the elementary schools. I will say it is very, very hard to find purple and gold things to wear that don't say Mannheim on them. Red and black would be much easier. But I do the first part. I would love to see us have more conversation about the first part, even if we choose to potentially lay off the second part. And again, the funding for the second part. Every teacher would need new gear. Every student would need new gear. And we at our elementary school provide that. So it would be a cost that I just don't think we can absorb with what we've taken on right now. But the other part, the first part, I absolutely see the value to that. I think that we should at least have more conversations in reference to that.
Yeah, I think it's a multi-year process. A lot of it is just everybody getting on the same page and agreeing on things, and that's going to take time. So, and then phasing things out and
So
changing things naturally.
if I can summarize, if you would, if you're going to continue running on this, and I encourage that, I would ask that you focus, of the three, I think I would like to see us, one, make sure we've secured our own logos. I think that's really important, so we don't have them uncut. And then the second one would be to develop, along the lines of a motto we can use all the way through. Personally, I think Strive's a little long. If you ask most kids what Strive is, a lot of them won't be able to tell you. Right. So I would like to see it shrink down. But I think there's definitely merit to creating something we can
You could
use
do
all the way
run.
through as a motto.
You could yell that in your classroom.
What was it? Run.
If I may. for a
I'm
second here.
joking.
So, are you done?
Yeah.
So just another comment on the financial aspect. Obviously, we have to buy new stuff every couple of years anyway. So if we do set this up as a long term, we can start working on that. And I do think the logo would be obviously the first thing to do. Maybe we could even partner with one of the other school departments or whatever, and see if a student could create something that we could expand upon, or make it a contest in the school or whatever. But yeah, I'd like to see the logo first, and then we can see if we can run with it.
I was able to review this over the weekend while everybody was going crazy about the snow. And I thought it was interesting. My first thought went to Gettysburg, but then Gettysburg isn't the same. So basically what happened in Gettysburg was a woman saw the logo, trademarked it, and then said, hey, I want to extort you for money. We can't do that. I would like comment from Dr. Dalton on this, but in comparing the current Mustang logo, it is almost an identical mirrored Ford Mustang, which is trademarked.
It's a little bit different.
It's slightly different on the tail, but there's 15 points of reference into the design of it that is almost identical to a mirrored Ford Mustang. So when I saw the logo of the horse heads, that's not a trademarked one. So that's actually, that actually looked pretty interesting, like you said, with tweaking the design, I don't think we would run into a Minnesota Vikings issue or a Ford Mustang issue. Like, if you look at York City, their Little League Baseball, they use New York Yankees logos, but they're using it for a non-commercial purpose. They're not profiting from it. So legalities are always everywhere that we have to keep in mind. So I'm not a sports guy. You know what I mean? I'm a business guy and a money guy. But when I looked at that, I was like, okay, it's decent conversation to have. But like you said, also, my mind went there. Survey all the sports parents and see what they say.
Oh, it's,
Because I think it's going to be split pretty interesting.
I sent out a beta. I created a survey. I sent it out to a group of people, and I think that's kind of how I got here. But it was very interesting. There was only like 25 responses on it, but the responses were pretty interesting.
That's all my thoughts was trademark, but Keith had something on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I played sports, and my first reaction was absolutely no way. I mean, I think the schools need to have that separation, but then you start thinking about the application in our district, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't even have to go to Manheim Elementary School to play for the Manheim Vikings. Is that correct? You can actually play because they are non-affiliated with the school. So you don't have to live in that area.
I
So
believe
we're
you still
not
have to
branding.
be, you do.
You do. Well, I know a couple kids that actually change back and forth.
So I mean, in the years past, we have had students that have moved from Manheim to other Southwest schools. So we had a young man move in his second grade year or third grade year to West Manheim and attended West Manheim. He had established himself as a third grader playing football at Manheim, and they did allow him to play at Manheim, even though his residents put him into West Manheim.
I know for a couple.
And I
a fact
believe
for a
it's the
couple
same
other
for
students.
homeschooled children, cyber schooled children that reside in the district. They would always have the right to play on any of our district-based teams.
We have no idea because we do not regulate that.
Correct.
So
Okay.
what I
Okay.
apologize. I don't have an answer
So,
for you. That we stay out
was
of
the
it.
point I was getting at is we shouldn't be regulating anything that does with that. So I would actually be interested in seeing the possibility of going down the road of one title. I mean, because we're all Mustangs.
And again, there's me lensing it from the high school, from the varsity level. That's what I want. I want our kids being ready for that level and buying into that. So there's where I thought we could keep some of that differentiation if we do the colors and the kids really rally around those colors more so than I don't know. That was just, again, just
When I
an idea.
played football at that age at elementary school, our teams were based on towns. So we were Chambersburg Steelers, Fayetteville Browns, McConnellsburg this, so it had nothing to do with the school zone.
Yep.
Our elementary school had no titles at all until you got to the high school level. And I can see how it can be an issue. So
I think to your point, and I don't disagree with you, but because we do not control the club football teams, they could continue to be the Packers, the Bearsville Bears, the Vikings. And if the goal, of course, is to eliminate fighting in the middle school when they're all put together, it's still going to happen because those club teams can do whatever they want because we don't regulate them. And please, someone help me because I don't know. The basketball teams, are they club at the youngest levels?
They are.
They are also, but they are the Southwest Mini Mustangs. Okay. So they're a little closer, but
even as Mr. Sieg said, I mean, even in the military, in the Marine Corps, we were all one color. We were all green. You're light green and dark green. That was the only difference. So,
And that's,
just
that's
food for
kind of
thought.
my idea too. Like,
Well, Mr. Sake, I'm going to read the room and say we've devoted a significant amount of time on this. I appreciate you
Thank you.
putting it forward for us. I really do. And hope we give you some direction on where to go with it.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank
this
you.
was just a discussion, so there's no need to vote on
Right.
anything. this evening.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so moving on, 8D1. Mr. Plessick.
I'd like to make a motion for 8D, 1, 2, and 3. The first one is the bus. And the second is basically paying bills for the contractors. And the third is basically the furniture purchase.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
Mr. Lady, second. Any discussion?
I had a
Oh,
question.
Yes,
Just to clarify,
Oh.
on the scrapping of the bus. no.
right.
Sure.
We altered our number one to be scrapping the bus.
I just had a quick question. With this, the scrapping of the bus, it was due to a title issue?
Well, title/liability.
Okay,
For us just to simply donate to the fire company, which would be a nice thing to do,
yeah,
we would have to transfer the title over to them, and we'd have to have them provide to us a hold harmless agreement. And that would probably cost money as opposed to us not spending money.
so just to think outside the box here, since we're about to vote on it. If a private citizen were to take that off our hands, do what you just said, could it ultimately still be donated to the local fire department so that they are better trained to protect our students in the event that there is a school bus involved in an accident?
So it gets a little more complicated than that. For us to sell it to a private individual, we'd have to go through a bidding process, which we've done in the past to bid out old buses.
Okay,
And we usually get $500 for a bus.
right.
Some farmers you've seen, they cut them in half, use it to haul hay. That's been done. But once we sell it to party X,
They can
it's
do
up to
whatever they
them.
want
We
with
don't
it.
really
Okay.
care about that.
And why did we decide not to go to municipal bid on this one?
I'm sorry?
Why did we decide to not go to municipal bid on this one?
Because it has no engine.
Okay. That's fair. That's a fair
Good
point.
answer. Good answer.
But if it's a hay wagon, it doesn't need an engine.
Yes, they usually drive them. They put the.
Oh,
they-
okay.
they-
So it's
they
a
cut the
hay
actual-
RV.
Well, it's a hay RV.
Mr. Mummer, what was the cost in that transfer to the fire company? They weren't willing to,
Well, we would have incurred either the title cost or coming up with the legal document to make sure that we're covered from a liability standpoint. The issue I raised with our insurance company was if the fire company uses it for training and they start a fire on this bus and a firefighter gets injured, can they sue us for liability purposes? And the answer was yes, they could. And I said, well, I don't like that. How can we prevent that? I said, well, transfer the title in their name so it's out of us.
Yeah.
Make sure they sign a whole harmless agreement saying, no matter what happens, no matter if someone gets hurt, we're not going to hold the school district accountable. And we just felt that was probably too many hoops to jump through and just scrap the downtown bus.
Could they buy it from the scrapyard?
I don't care what they do from the scrapyard. Yes, they could. I would imagine.
I was just thinking we could offer for them if they wanted it to cover those costs, then they could still, to get it, but if we didn't offer that. Okay.
To my knowledge, we didn't offer that.
Okay.
All right, so I see you hovering, Mr. Osborne. Would you like to weigh in?
Well, I was just going to offer some more description and explanation, particularly in items 2 and 3. Items 2, the monthly billing for the project. The attachment with your agendas, we'll list those out individually. In my mind, we of course, we have our 4 primes for their monthly payment applications, which is pretty standard. The architects, Hanover Land Services, which is our surveyors, it's permitting fees. But the important part that I wanted to bring out for the board, we were able to complete our asbestos abatement at the high school over the Christmas break. All students were out. The removal of the windows with the glazing that actually contained the asbestos, which was on the exterior sides of the windows, was all removed per plan. All happened in a timely manner, per the original proposal. While they were there, there was 2 other items were pointed at by the contractor, said, hey, we don't like the looks of that. While we had all the guys suited up, the rooms tented off, and our consultant there said, hey, let's make sure this is not an issue. Good news is we tested the black mastic. Things that are black tends to set the contractors off. The black mastic did not test positive. And also there was some black insulation board underneath the slab that when we cut the concrete slab was exposed. Didn't anticipate that being there either. Again, that tested negative. So those costs that you see associated within this monthly payment app have taken care of the asbestos. To the best of my knowledge, we should be in good shape at this point until next summer. Again, when the building students leave, teachers leave, we have some more of these windows we'll have to address at that point. The actual proposal from the asbestos abatement contractor, we incurred an additional couple $100 charge because of these additional areas that we pointed at and kind of treated with concern until proven otherwise. So there's an additional, I think, $400 charge on top of what the initial proposal was that was reviewed with the board.
No, I appreciate you looking at that. There was some scuttlebutt circulating that we had found more, and I appreciate you being able to answer to that effectively. So thank you for
Yep,
looking at that.
We want to take care of it best we
Right.
can, so. At each board member's seat is our spreadsheet. For those members that were here for the prior project with the middle school, this is what the business department uses. We kind of internally track our costs for our projects with it. It's something we got in the habit of sharing, based on Rich's request. But it's a good way to track where we're at with our costs. It lists those standard monthly contract or standard contracts for the monthly payment applications. And then as you scroll down that sheet, at this point, the change orders, for all intents and purposes, are our value engineering efforts. That's how I'm using to track it. You can see we have a few things to the far right that were denied. We have things that are under review, which I'd like to talk to the board about real quick this evening so we can put it on for future approval. The pending stuff is things we have talked about. We're just waiting on the contractors and the architect to tighten up the actual change order language, specifications, and scope so that we can put before the board for formal approval. And then, of course, the accepted is the stuff the board's already taken action on. So to run through those real quick, we slide down through the general contractor, change order 5. That's a $70,203 change order. That is value engineering effort. We went back through and reevaluated where all ceramic tile was specified in the new renovations. We were able to identify some areas that we thought were maybe overly high. It was out of reach. We like to put ceramic tile where we see a lot of abuse, scuffing, scraping, potential graffiti because the tile cleans nice, it resists markers, etc. So we were able to lower some of the high areas, take some areas out of the scope. And that is a $70,000 value engineering save. And I highly recommend the board that this is a good direction to go because, again, I think we were very specific on what our goal was. It's to make our building durable, hold up, look well. Here's some areas we can eliminate this high cost tile and not have to worry about those items. Sliding down to our plumbing contractor, we see 2 initial change orders there, a $10,000 and a $15,000 credits. That is switching our mixing valve in the building that controls our water temperature in the building from a digital back to a mechanical. We've all been using mechanical in this district for years. We're accustomed to them. They're cheaper. It's one of those things, keep it simple, keep it consistent. Our maintenance crews can handle it. We didn't see the inherent worth of the upcharge to go to an electronic mixing valve that we're not comfortable with, we're not familiar with, adds a lot more layers of complication to it. The second item, the $15,000 one, that is the plumber's request to go from solder joints in the building to a pro press fitting. It's more of a modern fitting where you have a crimping tool that's gauged and set. And in my mind, I'm not trying to insult any of our plumbers, but it becomes just a very routine pressure, clamp it. It's kind of hard to mess it up. Soldering takes a knack. It takes practice. It takes years of on-the-job practice. And when you start dealing with 3-inch and 4-inch and valves that cost hundreds of dollars a piece, you can't afford to mess too many of those up. So the Pro Press, to me, is a good way for our contractor to achieve good, consistent levels of consistency when they're doing these joints without some of the added costs. So that's the savings.
Much
we see there.
faster.
Much faster, correct. Number 3 under the plumber is the change order that we brought before the board for rerouting some existing water circulation lines. Originally, it was proposed as a not to exceed price of $8,331. They were able to get it done for a charge of $3,949. You'll see that on for approval. But I was satisfied that we were able to get it done for less than half of what the initial run through and look at was. Down on our electrical contractor, change order 2, this is one we've been working on for quite a while. We've been talking about it. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. We finally have it on our end. We feel pretty comfortable with it. I'm happy to present it to the board. As we run through that real quick so the board's aware, MC cabling. MC cable is the metal flexible cable. Most of our conduit in our buildings, we always specify a hard rigid conduit. Again, it takes time, it takes more figuring. A quick flexible line makes things go quick. They offered us a $39,000 credit by expanding where we can use the flexible metal cable. To us, we talked about it. We've worked out some concerns here and there, and we're comfortable at this point recommending to the board that this is a good route to go to save us $39,000.
Can I ask a question on the electrician? So are they
Sure.
caught up? Are they holding us up still? They were behind for a little while.
Well, as of the job meeting today, the area that we were concerned about as far as getting prepped to actually move the physical schedule forward, they told us they're done. We can have it back, get the floors poured, get the mechanical room moving forward. The things that we were concerned about, the timeliness of the submittals, the procurement process, getting things ordered. We've been told at this point, and I do feel at this point, things have been ordered. Now it's just a matter of working through the long lead times from the manufacturers.
And even though this is going to be a faster process with these flexible cable, the concern was product that's going to be going out a year. So that's not really going to speed them up
Correct.
necessarily.
Yeah, the major concern points with electricians was our switch gears, generators, all that type stuff have at least a year backlog.
Yeah.
Things seem to be getting a little bit better, but when it goes from 54 weeks down to 48 weeks, yeah, it helps some, but boy, that's still a long time to wait for fundamental components that you need to be able to energize new sections of the building.
So we'll still have to keep an eye on them, but as of right now,
Absolutely.
we're on track.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Their lighting substitutions, they brought forth to us some alternate lights. We've also changed, as you remember, some of our ceilings from a clouded architectural featured ceiling to more of just a wall-to-wall drop acoustical tile ceiling. With that standardization of the ceiling and kind of making it less of an architectural feature, some of the substitution value there was to go away from fancy architectural lights to more of a standard 2x4 light that we're used to seeing in commercial buildings. Again, then that's just a $50,000 credit. They were proposing a reduced retainage, which I've talked to the board about before. For the amount of money they're offering us, I don't think it's worthwhile for the amount of leverage we lose on them. So that's what I'm recommending we deny. Again, the ceiling layouts, that's tying back into the light changes in different rooms, whether it's the media center, whether it's the band room, whether it's the orchestra room. So we're basically standardizing our lights, which again, as far as our maintenance department goes, is a good thing. Big high rooms, when you have a 20-foot ceiling, I challenge most of you to be able to walk in that room and come back out and tell me what kind of light was up there 20 feet in the air. I think it's a change we can make that does not negatively factor into the overall design of the building. So at the end of the day, it turns into real money from our electrical contractor too. So we're happy to move to that direction. And again, we have a metal edge detail that we're still working out in the building for a couple $1,000 potential credit, and the terrazzo floor concrete demolition as far as primarily the cafeteria and some of our patchwork we have to do. So those are some last kind of couple items to work through in the BE. And then unless there's any other questions about the high school project, number 3 is something that I think is probably new to quite a few members here on the board. As far as the middle school project goes, we had a budget number for furniture. We went through and took care of all the classrooms, all the educational spaces as far as new furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Then we just recently installed new furniture in the main building offices. Now, to close this part of the project out, we're proposing this $91,000 proposal puts new furniture in district central offices. At this point, if you walk through our offices, not many of the rooms match. A lot of the stuff's been piecemealed. The last time that a major furniture package was brought into this building, to the best of my knowledge, was roughly 30 years ago in 1992 when this end of the building was done. So as you look at the desk, you look at the furniture, it's in here. Most of it's showing its age. You got drawers that don't close all the way. You got finish that's wore through. Corners are banged up. So with the guise of completing this project and making it look like a renovated building, giving us nice consistency in offices, that when you walk from one office to the next office, that when we welcome new staff in, they're being shown an office that has nice furniture. This is our recommendation as far as the furniture package. The furniture, I've shopped it around pretty hard, really beat on our local furniture supplier a good bit. The pricing that you're seeing is better than the state procurement CoStar's packages, and it's actually represents a 60 to a 70% discount off of manufacturer's suggested retail. I really don't think I can wring too much more out of the supplier.
Okay.
And this was money that was already budgeted from the middle school project that was left over to be used up as per the money that was procured for that project years ago.
Correct.
This is, I don't want to say it's not an additional expense, because obviously it's an expense, but this money was already earmarked.
I was wondering, I was gonna ask
Correct.
why it wasn't figured into the budget for the remodel, but, so it was
It
already.
was.
So it was, we had a percentage that we carried in the project as far as furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. My priority that I kind of shared with the staff here is let's take care of the classrooms, the student desks, the teacher desks, the educational spaces, make sure the shops, the art rooms have what they need. And we worked our way through. Once we got those areas all done, we took care of the building administrative office. Now we're kind of down to district administrative office. We still have money left to cover this, and I think it's a good move to
What do we do with the old,
professionalize our
what do
building.
we do with the old furniture? Have a yard sale or
This-
throw it in the
this-
dumpster or what?
The stuff that we can repurpose within the district, it looks decent. We absolutely do that.
Oh,
We
so you
reach-
can move it around.
We reach out, we check, is there a nurse's office over here, or, a new position got filled at another building that they need some furniture. So that's our first recourse. If we have other stuff that looks good, we'll try to sell it. We sold some furniture on municipal bid. And then we get down to stuff where we, at the end of the day, we make it kind of a decision within the department. It says, this stuff, there's no way we're gonna sell it. We're gonna move it 3 times. People are gonna offer us $5 and not show up for it. We just need to send it straight to the scrap yard or junkyard, whichever it may be.
We have had auctions in the past. There are rules of how to get rid of equipment, and so we have had auctions in the past as well.
Probably better as a write-off. You get a write-off for trash.
We don't
Loss,
get a
loss
write-off.
No
For
taxes.
tax exempt, we get no
No
write-off.
taxes.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the blanks I wanted to fill in for the board to see.
That was very good fill-in. Thank you. Okay, so hearing no further discussion, I'm assuming, I think we're good to proceed to a vote. Jeff?
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, moving on to 8E1, Mr. Lady, if you would.
Yep, I propose 8E1, a recommendation to approve the proposed expulsion agreement in disciplinary matter 2023 to 2024-07, as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Mr. Lady motion, Mr. Smith second. And a vote?
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Leidy,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
I'd like to make a proposal to recommend the motion 8E2, recommend to approve proposal of expulsion agreement in the disciplinary matter 2023-2024-08, as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Motion.
Just for the public to understand, there's 4 different disciplinary matters we have that are all very different in scope. And so I'm breaking them out individually so that we can vote on them as individual items.
So Jeff, that was a motion by Mr. Lady, second by Mr. Smith, and we'll have a vote.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9-0. 9 yes, 0 no.
Make a motion to approve 8E3 is another disciplinary matter, number 2023-2024-09.
Second.
Motion Lady, second Mr. Smith, and a vote?
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Abstention because I know the family.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention.
Proposal recommendation 8E4 to approve the proposal for expulsion agreement 2023-2024-10.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lady, second by Mr. Smith, and a vote, please?
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Abstention due to working with the family?
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
8 yes, 0 no, 1 abstention.
I'd like to make a recommendation to approve 8E5 is for the Southwestern Drama Department to use the high school auditorium most of the month of January, February, and throughout a couple weeks in March. This is just the drama department. The only reason that they're required to get approval is because it's on Sundays, and our policy states that they need board approval for Sundays. So this isn't really anything special. We would give this to them if it was any other day without even asking.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Lady, second by Mr. Smith. A vote, please?
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
And a proposal for 8E6 is for Seahorse Swim Team to use the middle school pool. Again, this is for a relay race. The Seahorse Swim Team already uses our pool for practice and things. This is on a Sunday, so they need approval. They are a Title B, so they're going to have to pay a small fee for it.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Lady, second by Mr. Smith. Roll call vote, please?
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, moving on to 8F1. We have several recommendations. I suggest we go through them one at a time. The first one would be 8F1, recommendation to approve tentative adoption of policy 000 introduction. Motion. I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
So
Oh,
I need a first and a second. So first from Ms. Brennan, second
I'll second.
from Ms. Bauer. All right, discussion? Do you want to cover, do you want to address that at all? Right, it's been up before, so, go ahead. Yeah.
Just a reminder that this is to put in line for the 000 policy that talks about how the policies are numbered in the policy manual for the district. The district had gone through the process of consolidating from the 300s, 400s, and 500s based on different classifications of employees within the district, and has subsequently condensed them to be all in a new series of 300s. So the 000s now reflects that condensement down into one set of 300 policies.
Thank you, Dr. Dalton. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, moving on to 8F2 is a recommendation to approve the tentative adoption policy 005 organization changes. A motion, please?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lady, second by Mr. Gelsinger. Discussion? I'll start that one off. So in looking at our 005 and going over um, development of our committees, we had several items that we went to address that we felt that we needed to. The first one was whether we were going to change any newspaper we're with. I think we got from Mr. Mummert that we were satisfied with the newspaper we were currently listing in. And then secondly is to declare our depositor who we're depositing with. Making that discussion, I've reached out to Mr. Mummert. Mr. Mummert, would you please just relay, sorry for the trip, would you relay who we conduct that business with? And
Certainly. We have a depository, a local bank. Okay, first of all, you usually have a local bank so you can make the actual physical deposits. And our local bank is Fulton Bank. We did a RFP for banking services back in 2016, and they were the best option at that point in time. We have been with several other banks in the past. What happened, as you all probably have experienced at home, where banks started charging fees, significant fees, and we tried to avoid fees. So we have a banking relationship with Fulton Bank. We also use the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust, PLIGIT, and PASLOF, Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund. Those are also investment options that we have used in the past. And so we need to establish them and name all of them as depositories. So anything else you want me to talk about?
So our understanding in looking at this was we need to name our depositors. We bank with several, so at this time, we have a deadline out in, when is that, June? June, so we have time to examine that. So we're gonna basically leave that undeclared until we have to, so we can look at it a little further. In addressing our 005 further, we made several changes. One is holding our building and grounds meeting, we have traditionally covered multiple topics, and it's been attended by a majority of our board members. In looking at our policy, we prohibit an attendance by a majority of our board members to committee meetings. So proceeding forward in conference with Dr. Dalton, she suggested that we enact a committee of the whole meeting so that we are then allowed to convene as a quorum to discuss matters that are both related to building and grounds and other items that are not related to that committee. So we've inserted that piece into the 005. And along those lines as well, when we formed the committee membership, there's a piece in Robert's Rules of Orders in trying to determine whether we're reaching that quorum. I had to understand as a president why, if I should be included in those committees or not, because previously, our previous board president was not. And Dr. Dalton explained to me that there's a ex officio piece in Robert's Rules and Order that allows the board president to attend committees while not being a member of those committees. He can attend, but he's not considered count towards the quorum. So we put that into our 005 organization policy as well. And so going forward, we will be holding committee of the whole meetings to address any items, any meetings that we need to cover multiple items under as a quorum. And we've just renumerated all our policies. We did add 2 committees, a school safety committee and a policy committee for development of policy. And I think that's the majority of our changes under this. Is there any other
Why does it
comments for
state
this?
here about the 1 hour before for executive sessions? What's that request for?
So that's just for clarity. It says should, just so that we have a general idea of when people can expect us to be holding executive sessions, so that when we state in our meetings, we held an executive session and why, they have an idea of when we generally hold them. That was the reason for that addition. It's a should, it's not a must, so we generally are gonna meet before our regular meetings for executive sessions.
Well, yes, I understand that. I guess I just wanted to know if Dr. Burkhart that was something that you requested, or normally you're the one that sets those agendas as far as the time frame.
Yes, usually the executive session should be able to be wrapped up in an hour. If it'd be less, if we have 1 item, 2 items, we can always adjust that. And Mr. Gelazell and I did discuss it. And the other part is that the attempt to not run into the 7 o'clock start where people are waiting and we're still in our executive session. So
Well,
typically,
the reason I ask is because our committee meetings start at 6:30.
yes,
So that would make it 5:30
we would have.
if we're going to do an hour ahead of time.
Well, if it was a committee meeting, not a committee of the whole, we would do our best to avoid the executive session.
Okay.
So, but I understand what you're saying, Mr. Plessis. So keeping that in mind, I'll be mindful that if we do have to call an executive session before a committee meeting.
I guess I
we-
just, yeah, I
Because our
didn't, I mean,
building
it's an
ground is
executive
really
session. I didn't know why it needed to be in there.
It was just an addition for extra transparency when we're normally meeting for executive session, so people would know. We can, that's why we made sure to make it a should. so-
We state that at the beginning of every meeting, just
Yeah.
FYI.
Okay.
I mean, that's about as open as you can get about it.
So are you making a motion to remove that piece then, or?
I don't see a reason why it needs to be there.
Okay,
Well, there's already a motion on the table.
right.
So, I
So
mean-
we have a motion, right?
It's a
I just get the
tentative.
sense of if it's worth making it, if anybody would. This is a tentative adoption.
True, it's a tentative adoption, but I suppose the question would be if a majority of the members of the board were interested in removing that, then it would go back on the 24th as another the first tentative read, because you have to start it over, because it would be a substantive change. But if, generally speaking, just talking with the board members here, if a majority are saying, no, we have no problem with keeping the language in, then there would be then the next meeting would be a final adoption. That's sort of my point, is whether the board would want the removal of it or for it to remain. So,
Well, I think,
I don't think it requires a motion as well.
I'd just like to comment. I mean, you need to understand the difference between should and shall. Should is just if we're available. So if you're not available that hour ahead of time, communicate. And if there's enough people not available, then obviously Dr. Burkhart would adjust the time. It doesn't say we have to meet an hour ahead of time for executive session. Correct?
Right. Right. And
Again, then why, just state the executive sessions are held before the meetings. I mean, I don't understand what the hour, means or why it's in there. If we're just gonna set the time based on what we're gonna have to discuss. That's all.
So are you more leaning towards, if it has to be in there, it would be more, should an executive session be needed, it would be before one of these meetings as opposed to,
Yeah.
if we
With a
hold it,
specific
it should
time.
be
I'm fine with
an
that.
hour before? Is that where you're going with that?
Or are you just saying remove the time constraint and say we'll
Yeah,
have executive sessions prior to the meetings
that's
at
correct.
a
That's all
time
I'm
determined
saying.
by,
I don't understand what
you
the
know,
hour means.
if needed?
okay. So I guess,
We have to vote the one down before we can probe.
No, you can, just Robert's rules, you can make an amendment on this
Right.
right
Well,
now.
you could, except that again, I don't know, it's supposed to, it's, I would argue it's a substantive change. So you're making a change that affects the policy, so it'd have to go back to a tentative adoption again on the 24th.
I don't think it affects the policy, as we just
yeah,
talked about.
and this
I mean,
and this goes
it's-
back to the
Okay.
point I made earlier, is if we have a member of the board who doesn't like the motion on the table under Robert's Rules of Order, we can make a motion to amend the current consideration up for adoption. And then under Robert's Rules of Order, the amendment would go through, we would make the adjustment to the language, and then we would proceed on the vote that is currently on the floor.
Understood. And my point is not made on the motion. My point is made on the edits to the policy itself. But so, right? So like my point is not about how we revise the motion, and
Okay.
I understand how that's done. And it's just a recommendation or a thought is, in your policy, it talks about if, unless it's a substantive change, and I can pull it up, then any substantive changes made to a policy would constitute a first read at the next
board policy.
She's just saying because it hasn't been in the public's eyes for 7 days. If
Yeah.
We're changing the wording and everybody had 7 days to read it as it was
Okay.
written, then, am I
Well,
understanding that
Yeah, so
correctly?
the 30, the 30
Yeah.
days. And so that's all I'm saying. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Lady. If the board agrees it's not substantive, but I mean, usually it's a syntax thing that I say that's not substantive and generally otherwise. That's for consistency of my advice, but that's my advice.
Follow-up
point.
question.
Yeah.
So if what I'm understanding you say is correct, if this were not to be approved for tentative adoption, what happens to the whole ex officiary and the committee of the whole
The rest of it.
factors?
Well,
The other pieces of the 05, right?
so
All
that
be voted.
they would, I, I guess they wouldn't really be in effect until the full policy is adopted. And I know many people, at least I understand, would want this to be passed today.
But are there, I mean,
Or
truthfully, are there
tentatively
committee
adopted
meetings
today.
prior to the next meeting at the end of this month? There are not planned right now.
Yeah, but it would take us
It-
2 meetings to get it through.
It would
Yeah,
go
you
next
still
week.
have the reading time frame. It's, hold on.
Dr. Dalton, just so you and I had a very brief exchange. We are looking at, in the not too distant future, of having a facility dog in one of our
Oh, yeah.
buildings.
We're talking about
And
Mhm.
one of the things that we need to do is draft the policy from a therapy dog to a facility dog because there is a difference. Therapy dog could be assigned to an individual, a facility dog is the district's. So we're not sure exactly when the dog will be coming, but if we were going to bring you a draft in the June, oh my goodness, in the January 24th meeting, I would ask the board to consider waiving the 30-day or 30-day review from tentative to final adoption so that should the facility dog come earlier, the policy would be enacted. Could this in fact be the same way, Dr. Dalton, where this one policy could be then presented on the 24th and then voted on in the February 14th meeting, which would be just short of 30 days? So we'd ask you to waive the policy for the the facility dog and this policy.
Yeah, so that is absolutely true. As a board, because the 000s are your own board processes and procedures, right? That's exactly what we're doing now. We're setting those. So I think if it were maybe something in the 1s, 2s through all the 900s, that might be somewhat different. But here, it's a revision of your own internal procedures. So, but certainly you always have, it says the board, and it's in policy 003, the board may, upon a majority vote, cause to suspend at any time a board procedure, and one of which is changes in a proposed board procedure or policy, except for minor editorial revisions at this, shall cause that reading to constitute a first reading. Now, this is the first reading now, so you could make the change.
And that's what I'm suggesting. As
right.
this is a first
Yeah.
reading, we could change the wording
Yep.
on a motion, and we're still under tentative adoption, so we still have a 30-day presentation to the public,
Mhm.
right?
Correct.
So
So, and just so you know, though, that doesn't make it effective on the 24th. It would have to be into February to make it the 30 days. That's what the other point I want to clarify. It's not the next meeting because it's 30 days.
But it wouldn't be
What
the next
Dr.
meeting.
Burkhardt just said is we can waive it.
Right. I'm right. Understood. But I also just wouldn't want you to waive it for every policy. That's another caution, right? Just
Right.
because you can waive it, I don't,
Right.
you know.
And we're only asking the waiver for, we'll be asking for the waiver for the facility dog simply because the
You rise
30
the next
days
day.
may exceed when the dog could
But if
be
you
here.
wanted, but if
Right.
the
And-
board
and
wants
that's-
this
that's why
organization in part. in
considering
place,
the committee, of the whole, and the other pieces of the policy, I think it's important that we get the policy as a whole put forward. So if Mr. Plessig's concerned on that piece of the policy, I would suggest that we make the motion and suggest and decide whether we're going to take that wording out. And if we do, then we can proceed forward. And if we don't, we have an additional 7 days plus our 30. Is that what I'm getting?
Just the 30. I don't feel like-
Total of 30?
Mhm.
Okay, so that's what I would be going forward. So, Rich, are you making a motion to remove?
Yeah, I
that?
can make a motion for that.
Okay.
Amend it.
Amend it. A motion to
Motion
amend.
And we need the wording you would want for that. So you would just want to,
I just wanted to drop the 1 hour, basically.
Drop the
It
1
just
hour?
should say should,
I second
prior
that
to our
motion.
meeting.
okay,
But first you have to make a motion just to amend and then you have
right,
to
a
change the
motion to
motions.
amend the wording to read, where is it? I'm sorry, let me find it here. What page is it?
Eight
Page
F.
3?
No, the
The
page
policy
number on the
Policy,
policy.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So the suggested policy is normal setting for future board executive sessions would be 1 hour before any regular meeting, planning meeting, building and grounds committee meeting, or committee of the whole meeting. We would amend to read, normal setting for future board executive sessions should be before any regular meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I have a motion for that and a second
second.
by Mr. Lighty. And any further discussion on that motion? All right, let's have a roll call vote on that.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
All right, so that motion's amended. Now we're going to fall back to our prior motion to adopt policy 005, which we had a motion and a second on already. Do we need any further discussion related to the items on 005? No? Okay, let's proceed to a vote on that then.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay, proceeding to 8F3, which is a recommendation to approve tentative adoption of policy 006 meetings. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second.
I second.
Second by Ms. Brennan. All right, discussion. Basically, this is a revisiting on the prior debate we had regarding our video retention of our publicly viewable meetings. We added wording basically to the effect on policy, bless you, on policy 006 that reads, instead, notations or any video or audio recording shall not be the official record of an open public board meeting and shall not be destroyed following board approval of the meeting minutes unless the board directs specific recording destruction publicly and states the cause. So just a discussion on that, it basically, this would in effect make us retain our publicly viewable YouTube meetings indefinitely. And any videos that we need to delete for profanity or whatever else that might occur publicly, we can do that individually as needed if we state it publicly and state why we had to delete them because something was said on our audio tape that shouldn't be, offensively put out to the public.
If a third party chooses to censor our videos for whatever reason, I don't know how they
Right.
go about that process at all, but I do know that they do.
Mhm.
So if say YouTube ran a censor keyword search screen and one of our videos, something was mentioned and it got taken down, are we opening ourselves up to anything with what we're rewriting it, is my only question.
They just removed the audio from the video.
No, she's saying if YouTube pulls down our video and we have a
don't know.
policy.
We didn't vote publicly to pull it down. Like,
Right.
say it's not a word that we thought, oh, this would be a problem.
No, I see your point.
And then they make that decision. They remove our video. As it's written, we're saying we're keeping it forever. So is there something we need to put in there that just kind of flushes out? But the
Covers
third-
us for lightning strikes and stuff like that.
Third party may choose to,
Doesn't it say?
Well, it
we're
says
not
it's
gonna
not
eliminate it?
official record. It's not the meeting minutes, so it doesn't matter if YouTube takes it down.
So I had
That's
similar
beyond our
thoughts on
control.
that, but also revisiting where this was actually an issue and the discussion of right now it's free.
right,
If it ever became
a charged thing. Yeah.
cost associated to it, we needed to reserve the right to reconsider the
Right.
forever.
And in considering that and looking at this, we can always readjust the policy as needed. If it becomes cost prohibitive, we can revisit policy 006 and say, okay, we need to redress this because now it's costing us money. I do understand your consideration there.
No, and I agree with you. It's not the written, and that's specifically stated, but it's also specifically stated, we're not getting rid of it. So if.
Yeah, we're not.
If I understand, but if YouTube does and someone in the audience goes to query a meeting and they're like, oh, where'd that meeting go? Oh, they don't have anything in notes that said they got rid of it. And then someone says, oh my gosh, we didn't, they did. Are we responsible at all?
No,
That's
and
my only
it's
question.
more to Mr. Lighty's point, like, and this goes for many policies. If the district, the board, and if it's, about students when they're here at school time or employees when they're here, there's only so much that the board can control, and this is
Right.
about board action. So if the board is not taking it down, certainly if
Then we
somebody
won't be
learns about
liable
it,
for
you
a
contact
disappearance.
YouTube and it's announced, here's why.
Yeah.
But it certainly is out of the board's control.
Okay,
So
that's all I was
yeah.
Would
worried
it be helpful if we put in there that we shall not destroy the
think it says-
videos?
It's,
It doesn't say.
We could, and that was I had a similar thought. We shall not be destroyed by the
by
district.
us. That way, if it does get destroyed by somebody outside of our control, we can't be held liable for violating our own policy.
I mean, Dr. Dalton, you think that's necessary? You think that's presumed if it's out of our control, we don't need?
No, I think it should, I mean, it should say, unless, the board shall not, because it says, and shall not, it doesn't really say who is.
Shall not be
and
destroyed by the
shall not
board.
Destroy.
All right, so let's go through the same process. I'll make a
Right.
motion to amend
By the school district.
that paragraph saying that we shall not destroy the videos.
second.
So we have to get
District,
exact
the
wording,
school district.
right? So,
Yeah, I won't do it.
Yeah, I won't either. I second that motion though.
so we need to make our amendment motion clear though. So we're going to change the wording to, shall not be official record of an open public board meeting and shall,
I would recommend, period, right there. Shall not be an official record of an open public board meeting, period.
period, okay,
The district shall not
okay,
destroy
shall not.
any
destroy.
video or audio recordings following board approval of the meeting minutes.
Okay.
Unless the board directs specific destruction
Keep it
public.
up over there. Can't write that fast.
So Jeff, to recap.
As
we-
long as YouTube doesn't get destroyed tonight, we'll be. I'm not writing on
And
that.
a quick reminder, the purpose of editing this policy is that reading meeting minutes is really boring. And there's not enough details in reading meeting minutes.
Right, absolutely.
So-
we think it would be better for transparency.
Mhm.
Same reason this meeting went way over time today, for transparency purposes to the public, is why this policy is being changed.
Mr. Mummert, I have an easier way. Is that
Cool.
preferred? Okay. So keep it all one sentence. Notations in any video or audio recordings shall not be the official record of an open public board meeting and shall not be destroyed by the district following the board approval of the meeting minutes unless the board directs. So basically, by the district, 3 words. And you can watch this video if you
He's
want.
gonna watch it tomorrow.
Watch back through the video.
So we're adding a period after, no? Okay.
No, instead of the
period.
words
I got,
1 calendar year, it's by the district.
okay, okay.
Roll call.
Do you have that, Mr. Mummer? Okay,
Sure.
So we have to vote on the amendment.
so we're voting on the amendment first, please.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
All right, now, if we're concluded on our discussion on the matter in general, then seeing no further discussion, Jeff, if you could take us down that roll call.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yep.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lighty,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Galzella.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
That was easy.
And then on to 8F4, recommendation to approve tentative adoption of policy 217, graduation requirements. We covered this briefly. Do we need,
It's a reflection of an update in law.
okay, thank you. So a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Gelsinger, second by Mr. Plessick. Any discussion?
So just one, I guess, comment or question. In both this version as well as the prior one, I just noticed the same annotations, the URLs didn't work and they still don't work. So I don't know why, but just an aside for when it gets published.
Okay. So would that be you?
That's usually a PSBA thing when you send, because
Okay,
PSBA
their
loads
links
it back
work.
and then they will upload the link to the right citation.
Okay, duly noted. Any other discussion? All right, roll call vote.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yep.
Mr. Gelzilla.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
8F5, recommendation to approve tentative adoption policy 233, suspensions and expulsions. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Motion, Mr.
I'll
Smith.
second.
Second by Mr. Plessick. Any discussion?
Just the same note.
Same note, URL's busted. Anyone else? Okay. Roll call vote?
Mr. Beard,
Yes.
Mrs. Brennan,
Yes.
Mr. Gelsinger,
Yes.
Mr. Lady,
Yes.
Mr. Plessick,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Bauer,
Yes.
Mr. Gelzilla.
Yes.
9 yes, 0 no.
Okay. Moving on to number 9, proposed January 24th, 2024 agenda items. Do we have any proposals? Facility dog? All right, so mentioned to add policy related to facility dog
Sounds like a children's.
in better work terminology than that.
Facility dog. Facility dog goes.
No,
to the
you said
zoo.
facility. Should that be plural?
No.
No.
So it's only for one facility? Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
What kind of dog is it?
Okay.
We don't know yet.
Oh.
It's,
Is it-
it's based on a match, but, and plus, they've asked that, we don't reveal anything because nothing's finalized. This is all still potential, but it's looking pretty good.
Is this gonna be donated or how is
Yes.
this all gonna?
Yes,
play
the training was donated, the cost of the training was donated, and the district will be responsible, obviously, for the healthcare of the dog and the food, but, it's a substantial training cost that we did not have to incur.
Yeah, I remember the conversation, I think well over a year ago.
That's how long it
Yeah,
takes.
it was a while
Yeah.
ago.
There was a different dog conversation a while back.
Yeah, there was other ones too, so that's why I was just clarifying.
Okay. Any further comment on those? Any additions? Nope. Okay, moving on, number 10, planning discussion of policies. So related to policies 103 and 711, I'm going to conglomerate those together and open discussion on that by saying this board's majority intends to reiterate to define our board definition of sex is determined at birth by your chromosomes. Withholding that belief, we have had sought legal counsel both with Stock and Leader, and we're currently seeking counsel, special counsel to engage them, as there are multiple firms who very firmly believe this is defendable. Contrary to much of the talk out there, this is very defendable. I have engaged with firms that are willing to further that discussion. So while tonight's discussion will not be too in depth in that regard, as we're currently aligning special counsel to discuss this matter and proceed in the most legally defensible manner possible. That's where we're at. I would also like to reiterate this board's current belief that the PHRC has overstepped its authority to define sex as not just defined at birth, but rather something that's gender inclusive, gender identity inclusive. The PHRC is an appointed panel that's an enforcement panel that's appointed by the governor and does not have the latitude to redefine language in a Pennsylvania Human Rights Act. When they define something that is, as we termed earlier, substantive, then that becomes something that should be done by the legislature, not by an enforcement arm appointed by the governor. So that is where this board's belief currently lays, and we are discussing that with special counsel currently. So that belief is also supported by the decision given at the Supreme Court relating to Bostock. Judge Gorsuch very clearly stated that anytime you redefine language in a law, you've changed the law, and it's up to the legislature to make that change, not the judiciary. So that's where we're at, and we will continue to align legal representation to move forward.
Matt, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Just because I may have missed something. You referenced Stock and Leader and asking them,
Mhm.
and they're currently being billed by our school district for their billable hours. The lawyer that you're speaking to, I don't know who it is. Are we utilizing taxpayer money at this
No,
point? We are
no.
not. Okay.
We're just engaging in the initial discussion of who's willing to put in an RFP for special counsel.
Okay. Just
Right, so
wanted
we're,
to make sure I understood.
no, that's an important clarification, right? We haven't spent any taxpayer monies on this. We're just reaching out to determine which solicitor firms would want to put in an RFP to represent us as special counsel.
Okay. And then for my own clarification purposes, I'm gonna break them back out.
Okay.
For policy 711, there's no attachment, so I don't know what the change to policy 711 would look like that you're proposing or having this conversation about, or if that's not even where we're at yet.
Right, the only reason it remained on the agenda was to have the discussion on seeking legal counsel. Obviously, we're not able to put forward a policy till we get that special counsel and they help us draft that. So this is more just to allow any public comment for anyone who wants to speak related to 711, and to leave it generally open for any board members that wanted to weigh in on it initially and continuously as we seek special counsel representation.
I guess since we're gonna wait to see what a new policy would look like, it's kind of pointless to give my point of view because I don't know what potentially the changes would be.
No, it's
I
not
will
pointless at
say,
all.
having sitting here for 2.5 years, we have spent a lot of money, a lot of time, we've gotten a lot of opinions. So I would hope that that is also taken into consideration because we definitely want to be cognizant of the amount of taxpayer money we're spending. And also, I believe that if tweaks need to be made to 711, that we need to remember that it was a unanimous vote, 9-0. It took 6.5 months to make. It protected all kids in all our buildings, every single child. Children were given options, parents were given options, administrators and teachers were on board from the very beginning and creation of the policy. And so if we tweak it, I do believe we need to keep that in mind as we put more taxpayer money into tweaking it. We sit here to make policy to better the lives of all students. And all students is all students. And I think that we can do that. And if we need to walk things back and put in more parental guidance so that parents are better read in, because that is something that I've heard time and time again is extremely important to the group that is sitting at this table, and I don't disagree with that. I think there is a way to do that without altering a policy that will still protect every tiny heart that walks through those doors every day, because they all deserve protection, whether I go home and I'm confused or whether I am here and it makes sense. That's not what I'm in this chair for. Every pair of shoes that goes through those thresholds every day deserves protection. And if you want to make changes, I think that can be done without violating all those tiny hearts or some of those tiny hearts. That's where I am. I'm not saying I'm not willing to listen, because I am always willing to listen. But the hearts that beat in those chests, they all look the same when you open those hearts. And I'm never going to be able to not see that. And I ask that we all would be there. And we find a common bond as we take these policies and tweak them so that every single beating heart in every single chest matters.
I can't say I disagree with anything that you said. The problem is it's not protecting all children currently. And if you talk to students of every grade in the middle school and the high school, anybody goes at will because it's closer, because the teacher tells them to go to the closest bathroom because their schedules are that tight. So not, maybe we just need to change the implementation of what is currently there.
Which is
There,
not-
what we
yes.
were talking with Dr. Burkhardt about the high school ones being moved from the front to the back, removable signage, things like that. Either way, there is boys and girls going into the same bathrooms because it's convenient. It's happening. I hear it all the time from students in every grade in the high school. So no, it's not protecting all of them right now.
Well, as
So
you said, and I agree, though,
implementation-
the implementation.
So
It's not the
implementation
policy.
definitely needs to change.
Right.
So I'm not sure what all needs to change, if anything needs to be changed in the policy, but it needs to be looked at. And a lot of members of the public are talking about it. So and no, people don't have time to come in to the microphone and talk about it. They don't. But we get phone calls, we get emails, we get text messages, we get all these things. And we got to listen to everybody, and we have to look out for every single kid in the district, just like you said. And I think we can do that better than we're doing right now. Because right now, I don't think it's good enough. I think we need an opt-in, not an opt-out. First thing we need to change in implementation is opt your kid in to use an inclusive bathroom, not opt out. Because they just go in because it's convenient. How do we protect them all if we don't know what's going on in there? That's all I got to say about it right now. So until we get further legal advice, that's what I think as of right now. We have to protect every single kid. Yes, we do. And we got to work together to figure it out. We're all one huge team in this district. So that's what we have to keep in mind. We have to be a functioning team, a well-oiled machine. So at some point, we're gonna all have to see eye to eye on this and figure it out. So seek further legal advice. That's what I think right now.
I personally think it needs to go forward right now, and we need to discuss it farther. I mean, I will respect the opinion of the board to wait until we get legal advice, but I also agree that we are not representing all the students right now. I've heard that said time and time again over the last year or 2 years since this policy was voted on and implemented, yet I hear from children, students with those beautiful beating hearts that you keep referring to, that are afraid to walk in here to that microphone and speak up for themselves. That's our job. And when we say, I wrote it down, that the unanimous vote for the prior board, that to me was outweighed by the unanimous vote of our community during the recent election. And now it's our job to make those decisions for our community.
And speaking to that unanimous vote you mentioned, so my vote was given because at the time we had no policy, and better to provide some kind of protection for kids who were uncomfortable using a bathroom with a child who errantly believes they are something they are not and is in opposite sex bathroom with them. So providing that protection is why I voted for it at the time. And I worked hard to make sure that this current board seated before everyone today got elected because I believe that strongly that our bathrooms should be separated according to birth sex. And that's how we protect our students. The idea that someone can change their sex is inherently flawed. If we accept that in policy for facilities usage, we will then have to accept it for sports, discrimination, and everything else. I wholly reject the idea that is a protected class. That class cannot exist because there are males, they were born male, and there are females that were born female. Those are the only two classes in existence. There is not a class otherwise that can be defined, and that's where our board policy will go. It's your sex is determined at birth. And anyone who believes differently is misleading children and not protecting their interests. Those children who are taught they can believe otherwise go out in society, and that's why they experience those suicidal rates that they do, because they're not getting the support they need. So that's how I intend to support our children.
But I personally think we do need to continue to go down the road. If we're gonna delay it for seeking legal counsel, I will go along with that temporarily. But I also agree with Mr. Smith that at a minimum, we need to start addressing the bathrooms as being opting in. That way we can get a better feel for the community. Because if not that many people opt into these bathrooms, then we obviously have heard the voice from the community that we're representing.
And there's another very important piece that currently exists in our policy that I can't stand by, and that is a child can come into our schools and elect that they are transgender without the parent's permission. That is a flaw in our policy that I argued against when we formed it, and it still exists now. And I can't abide by that. A parent should be involved in every single decision that a child makes. To allow the school to make that decision with them is something I can't let
And
stand.
moving forward, we need to all not only be as transparent as possible, but protect parents' rights just as much.
Right.
I'm not voting against parents' rights. I never will. And I'm not going to dwell on the past. I'm moving forward in a positive light. Parents need involved because we are all part of the same team. With the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the kids, we're all part of the same team. And we need to work with parents as much as we can. So shutting them out and not giving them a choice, that's nonsense. Total nonsense. Parents need involved and they need to know what's going on with stuff.
So would it be reasonable to start drafting up amendments to the existing policies to reflect the opting into the bathrooms and the requirement of parental notification now while we are going forward with the rest of it? Or is it a waste of time and effort and money?
Can I ask a question? Opt in, who's going to monitor that? Who's going to make sure that, I'll use my son, Jake, ma'am, please. My son, Jacob, opts into using that bathroom or opts out of it, whatever we want to say. Who monitors that? Because there's no way I can ask our administrative team to do that. And there's no way I can ask our teachers who are already working as hard as they can, doing all they can. I'm not saying it's not an option. What I'm saying is, if the board makes that policy, who's going to monitor that? Because there's no one in that building right now that can do it.
Well, who's
Who
monitoring?
monitor, yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you remember correctly, I'm not going to talk over the audience. I mean, we're trying to have a discussion as a
Yeah,
board.
we can't have the audience weighing in while we discuss this. I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is, when the parents send the letter in now, the board, the administration, if they become aware of it, takes action. They are not monitoring it actively. So if a student uses the bathroom, let's say my son Jacob uses that bathroom, and I've sent a letter in that he's not allowed. I notify the parent, say he's using it incorrectly, and that we have that conversation about what they can and cannot use. We do not actively monitor that because we cannot. So while that's an idea that it may very well have merit, we currently do not have the staff to monitor that.
So
If we become aware of it, we take action.
Right, and that's the inherent flaw in what we have now, in that we don't have the staff to monitor the bathrooms now. So if we have a child who elected with their parent to use a birth sex bathroom only, our staff we don't have the staff to monitor that now.
Correct.
So we are not, in fact, protecting the rights of those parents who want who want their children to use birth sex only bathrooms. They are currently unprotected because we do not monitor and we don't have the staff to monitor. And that's one of the flaws in our current system, is it's unmonitored. Now, if someone brings that forward, then obviously, the administration notifies the parent. But that is an inherent flaw in our current policy. It's still, as Mr. Gelsinger pointed out, Mr. Smith pointed out, it's still happening, right? So
Based on that comparison, that proves it's a catch-22. That proves it right there, either way. So in the absence of single-use bathrooms, which I like, by the way, they're in here and in hospitals and stuff. In the absence of single-use bathrooms, it's a catch-22. It's gonna get, it's not gonna work either way.
Don't we have teachers in the hallways I know we do in the mornings, and I'm not saying, I don't want to put more work on the teachers by any means, but most importantly, I think just for data collection, if we ask for because let's face it, most parents don't even know that this is happening in our schools right now. A lot of them don't know that they can submit a letter. So by forcing the opt-in, we would get a clear picture of how many people do support this.
Do we have any numbers now?
I'm not worried about,
To your point about notification, and the building principals, middle school, high school are here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you not send notification home to the parents via robocall and other information alerting them to the opportunity to opt out of that bathroom? Is that correct?
That still leaves the enforcement problem.
No, and I understand that. I agree with you, and it is an enforcement problem. And I know that I've heard you say about the number of students that are using it. I would argue that we have students, singular, small, 5 or less students that we run very significant programs for in this district based on their need and because it protects all the children. I'm not about to argue with the board and their policy. I think the board knows where I stand. I believe the policy we have is effective. But that being said, I do think we have to be mindful that we run programs for small numbers of students, or we run protections for small number of students that I would measure akin to this, that the policy currently is in place. There is no perfect policy, and Mr. Smith, to your point, I wish we had all single-use bathrooms for a whole host of reasons with our students, and especially our adolescents, but unfortunately, we do not. And barring a major undertaking of expenditure, and I don't even think, we did look at it, Mr. Osborne, at the high school, but there comes a capacity with, dare I say, the number of seats available based on the population that is in that building. So Mr. Gelazell and I have had numerous conversations. I appreciate his respect of my position. I feel the policy we have is effective. If the board pursues a legal advice, that's certainly at their discretion. But I do want to keep in mind that the policy as it stands right now, if you change it to an opt-in, it is virtually impossible to enforce unless we are aware of it, and we would then take action, no different than the opt-out.
Yeah, so either way, it doesn't work. There's no way of controlling it, so
And
it's.
to that point, so the special counsel that I've spoken with, they've suggested that in drafting policy, you go over all these this is not a new discussion by any means, right? So
Mhm.
the council that I've sought had said they will sit down and they will draft policy that will cover all these considerations very, very thoroughly to have a very concise, definable, defensible policy. And that's why I urge us to not make any steps until we have done that.
Agree. And a lot of us weren't here when the high school renovation was planned. So as far as where that is and how many single-use bathrooms are over there. There's already way too much money being spent on the high school, in my opinion, so.
Okay, so does anyone else want to weigh in on policies 103 or 711?
I just wanted to make clear that we do have, next week, we're going to an extensive law review with Stock and Leader, and that was kind of what we were waiting for this, is to, kind of pick their brain and listen to what they have to say as to how it relates to some of these policies. So that's, as well as the outside counsel that you're seeking, that was kind of the goal that we were going to wait for legal advice. Being that we have a lot of new people here, and that's what it's for.
And I don't ever want to take anything away from the hard work that was done on the prior policy, and I know you're very proud of it, Dr. Burkhart. But I said it before I was elected from that microphone over there, that I did not agree with parents being left out of these decisions. And that's my number one thing right now, is no matter what, the parents should have involvement with all of these decisions.
I agree.
I prefer when we talk about stuff like this is the truth matters, facts matter, whether they're relative or subjective is up to the person. But we need actual data, actual numbers on things. We need to stick to the truth on things, because just like even made up words, you can make up a word and use it for so long they add it to the dictionary. In 1994, well, maybe 93, somebody coined the term cisgender. I think it's completely ridiculous. So it saw a resurgence in the late 2010s. It was used so much they added it to the dictionary. It is a made-up word. It's ridiculous.
Along those words definitions, that's what's really crux to this whole discussion. The definitions the definition of sex was undefined in 1955 in the Pennsylvania Human Rights Act, and it was undefined in the Title IX discussions in 1972. So they were undefined in the statutes because in those years, in 55 and 72, sex was assumed to mean by birth. There was no definition required, just like there would be no definition required in language for the word the back then. The definition, the fundamental definition widely accepted legally back then was sex meant your at birth chromosomal makeup, which is often determined by your genitalia presented. And that's really the crux of this discussion is people are predicating this idea that you can change your sex based off Title IX and the Human Rights Act. And those acts were passed when this definition was clearly not what it is being presented as today. So if we allow this redefinition, then we have it affecting multiple policies. And that's why I think the crux of the discussion needs to be the definition of sex at birth.
I'm a dad of girls too, so when you look at Title IX, the whole purpose of Title IX was because girls and women had no rights to play sports in schools. Now, it wasn't like that everywhere. There were girls' teams, but by and large, they were not allowed to have a girls' team. That was the whole point of Title IX, is not discrimination based on sex. At the time of writing, sex and gender mean the same thing, exact same thing. In today's world, it has been changed that gender is a state of mind, it's a feeling, it's not a fact. Sex is a fact. DNA, hormones, chromosomes, XX for female, XY for male. You cannot change those. So the people in the media that try to say that, oh, you're whatever phobic this week, I reject it entirely. It is nonsense. Stick to the truth and the facts. So trying to say that I hate somebody, I don't hate anybody that's transgender. I love everybody as God tells me to. The problem is, I'm very disappointed in the medical community and the activist left community lying to these kids, telling them that they will be something that they will never be. They can never change to that. So this is a rant that I've been holding in for a while because the conversation to me is completely ridiculous. I'm a father of girls and I'm a father of boys, and none of them can change what they are. They can say they identify as something else. They will never be that something else. So for the medical community to create patients for life by lying to these kids, I think is disgusting. So no, I love transgender kids. I love everybody. What I hate is the medical community that's taken advantage of them. I see it as evil, and that is my opinion. So where we go on this conversation, stick to the truth, stick to the facts. I don't want to hear feelings at all. The public elected me to represent them. I am one of 9, well, one of 10, including Jay. So that's my position on it. That rant has been waiting for a while, and there it is.
Okay, unless anyone wants to pause me, we're going to move to 702.1, naming of school district properties. Hard act to follow, Wes, if you want to. Yeah, understood. Yep, we've gone over long. Yep. Just basically, so I can say we had a discussion, since this is on the agenda. It's to relate to accepting advertisement. Yep.
Wait, Mr. Winters, just for the people at home, if you could, please.
My wife will be texting me that she couldn't hear you.
Okay, so I'm going to make the request to postpone this till next
Right.
meeting, but just so it's on the record, myself, Mr. Mike Resitar, teacher and coach at the high school, John Beal, local business, well, he's not an owner, but works for local business, and Andy Burwager, one of our football coaches, have been talking. We know that there's a lot of money out in the community that wants to be given to the school district, but there's no policy for advertising. And a lot of times these local businesses, they want a little bit of recognition for, giving the money, and they want the community to see that they're supporting the school. And then hopefully those, people that are at the games and different events will then support the local businesses. So it's just a great partnership. So we have some things we'd like to go over and discuss, but I will hopefully postpone that till our meeting February 12th.
Makes sense.
That is a great idea. I would support that policy.
All right, with that, we move on to visitors. Number 11, anyone wish to comment? Oh, well, we have one, we'll let the lady go first, Mr. Carr, and then Yep.
My name is Laurie James. I'm a taxpayer. 2 kids that are Mustangs, blah, blah, blah. You're talking about getting some help from an outside legal representative, is that right? Who is paying for that? You said it's not taxpayers. So where does the money come from?
So right now, it's not currently any cost. We're entertaining a request for proposal, which goes out to seek special counsel. Anytime you want to get additional representation, you put out a request for proposal. Stock and Leader, they represent a multitude of districts. So I think they're in a unique position in that they represent both sides of this issue. So it makes it difficult to weigh in, which is one of the reasons we would seek special counsel that suits where the board wants to take policy. So once we go there, in those starting discussions, I can tell you one of those solicitors suggested he may be able to locate enough advocacy to make it a no cost for the district. We would want to keep it as low cost as possible.
But, and I think it's Mr. Galazello's making phone calls. So I don't think
Yep.
money's, that, to answer
Right.
directly your
Right.
question, nobody from the district, no, he's just making phone calls. And then at the point,
Mr. Galzello.
Mr. Galazello's, yeah, he's making phone calls, talking with people. And
Anybody
then,
else?
and then
making
at
phone
some
calls?
point when there, I don't know the details, but then at some point, the board would have to select whichever firm. And then it depends on what the terms of that arrangement is with that particular firm, the extent to which any money would be spent, or if they would, I suppose, donate their services.
initial-
Anyone else calling, making phone calls?
The reason that falls to me as the board president is I would represent the interests of
Thank
the
you.
board generally. So that's why.
Okay, majority of the board.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am, could you restate your name, please, just for the record?
Laurie James. Laurie.
And Matt, if I could add something?
Yes.
Maybe we might be able to describe it as market research. You know, imagine you are thinking of putting an addition on your house. You go out, you start talking to some contractors you think might meet your needs. You're talking to them about what have they done in the past? What capability could they bring to the table? Just, there's no cost involved at this point.
Stephen Carr, Manheim Township taxpayer. So I guess I can agree with all you here when when kids can walk into a school and change their sex or elect their sex just like that, and then the next day they go home as a male. But I mean, that's taking away parental rights. I mean, we all knew you gave birth to a girl or a boy at that time, and the Constitution under the 14th Amendment says the Constitution, specifically the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, protects parental rights. And there's a parental right amendment, section 1, the liberty of parents to direct the upbringing and education and care of their children is a fundamental right. There's a case that was called Troxel versus Gainesville, where a parental right was taken away from them. And in section 2, it says the parental right to direct education includes the right to choose an alternative to public education, right to make reasonable choices within the public schools for one's child. I think a reasonable choice would, have a bathroom for one identity to the other, and to have the parent to decide that reasonable choice for that student or for their kid. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Oh, wait, I think we have someone taking the mic here.
Okay, so I just want to say something.
Joanna Dodge.
Oh, Joanna Dodge, Southwestern High School student. Sorry, I'm just tired and stuff. But I just want to say something. I know you guys said it's not enforced of like using what bathroom, but on the first day of school, when all this like transgender bathrooms was in, I got told by one of my teachers specifically to use the one a certain bathroom that I was not comfortable in, and I told her that, and they were like, "Oh, well, you got to use this bathroom." And I asked her, I was like, "Why can't I go down to the bathroom that's down the hall?" And she's like, "No, you got to use this bathroom." So I don't know if you guys can see if you guys can try to like fix something about that and like try to like make sure like the teachers can let the kids decide of what bathrooms they want to use instead of forcing them to use that bathroom or use another bathroom. So I just wanted to say that because I feel uncomfortable first off using that Pacific bathroom, and I told her that and she didn't like that, but I don't know like what to do and how to like stand up against that. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understood as parents and people on the board. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dodge.
And to follow up on that, I'm Jen, her mom. It has been enforced because she has gotten in trouble for going to the wrong bathroom. Because it's taken her longer to go down the hallway to use the right bathroom when she could have used the one closest to her room, which was closer, but it wasn't the right bathroom, supposedly. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Dr. Burkhardt has advised me they'll look into that. Thank you. Yeah, and if you would, any student that has an issue like that, I'd advise them to seek their principals of their buildings to start that conversation if they feel like, and that's where it should start.
Yeah, she came up, nothing, but she came home and that day and she was very upset. And I'm like, did you talk to Mr. Winters or, and she said she wasn't sure how to.
Okay.
I think is the main thing. So I think maybe if there's a doorway between the teachers and principals or the students and principals as to get that conversation started, might even be a good issue. Like
Okay.
if you feel uncomfortable using this bathroom, let your teacher know.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Please state your name.
No, it's all right. Amanda Bonnet and Penn Township taxpayer. I have a clarification question. I mean, there's a lot of things that here tonight that are going to be addressed down the road. They need to be addressed. But generally the first time that the visitors are allowed to comment, okay, they need to put in a 5-day notice. Their name is included here on the agenda. And they need to be addressing something that's on the agenda. My question is, what agenda item was the good Reverend addressing when he stood up here and prayed?
So if you're willing, you have 5 minutes. I'll answer if you're done. I want to make sure you're done in all your comment before I give you an answer.
I'm fine. I just.
Okay. So in exploring this, I had intended to have the pastor speak before the meeting. I was advised by Dr. Dalton, sorry, that we should put that in the beginning items. So if,
Well, just to first clarify, any member of the public is allowed to make comment on any item on the agenda when they get here, right? So there are two ways, I suppose. There's one way to get your name on the agenda is to do, as you said, the 5-day request to be put on the agenda. But Sunshine Act requires boards to allow anybody who, anybody here from the public, taxpayer, student, parent, to have the ability to make a comment on an agenda item. Now, I go to plenty of board meetings and argue, I think you have the ability to have an agenda item specifically listed. And and you could go at the end when it's a non-agenda related item. One could make the distinction that, he was praying over just the general decision-making that was happening over the meeting, any particular agenda item. I mean, that was my advice. Mr. Gallazella was asked whether the comment should be made prior to the public comment as a part of the agenda. And I said, I think the most appropriate way to comply with the Sunshine Act would be to allow it during public comment because it's coming from a member of the public. It was not on behalf of the board.
Okay, so if I bring in a mom in here or a rabbi in here, would they have the same
I said the
right?
exact
up
same
here
thing
and
to him.
pray?
Yes, I said exactly that.
public comments, 5 minutes for whatever members or public.
I
want
said
to come
exactly
in,
that to him right before
So
the
long
meeting.
as they follow that, there's prescriptions under a policy for taxpayer, resident. So long as they fall within that, We can't prohibit anyone from speaking.
Okay.
I know I'm gonna make them a little nervous over there because I'm kind of talking out of turn here, but it was kind of discussed between a lot of the new members that we intend to open our meetings with prayer, much as Congress does, and just like our township meetings are. And we're working out how that's gonna work. So whether it's under public comment before the meeting, at the opening of the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, we're trying to work out how it's gonna go. But many of the members up here feel that it's important, as a lot of our legislation does exactly the same thing. And so that's what we're working
All right.
I did ask your same questions.
No.
I am not as faith-based as some of my fellow members, so I asked much of those same questions. But considering that we do it at a state level, at a federal level, there are ways to proceed doing this legally. We want to make sure we're doing that as best we can. But at this time, we don't feel like there's a prescribe against it, so that's kind of where we're at.
Okay.
The other option could be is if we do it prior to the meeting, and that way you have the option to sit out in the lobby until we're done praying.
As long as you're not forcing anyone to listen to it, I'm
Right.
fine. As
Okay.
long as you want to stand over there privately and pray, go ahead. I'm fine.
Well,
I mean, I'm
Also, keep in mind, it's a public meeting, and we all swore an oath to obey, uphold, and defend the Constitution of Pennsylvania and the U.S.
Yes.
The U.S. Constitution has the First Amendment. And a lot of times, the Establishment Clause is perverted to mean separation of church and state, but that doesn't exist. That is a lie.
But this
So
is,
we all
I do want to
have-
bring us back in. This is public comment section, right? So let's not get too deep into it, but yeah. I don't want to take time away from anyone else that wants to
Freedom
speak.
of speech.
I know everyone wants to go
I'm
home.
sorry to cut you off, Matt, but
And there is freedom of speech, but there is also separation of church and state, regardless of how you feel.
this isn't debate time. We have to remember that, right? Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak? Ms. Handy?
Hello, Julie Handy. I'm a resident of Southwestern School District. Have kids in here. This is Maylena. For the lady that spoke earlier about possibly if this is in our district regarding, I just wanted to touch on that yes, it is actually in the district. I know there's a lot of things with the bathrooms. My son actually, it wasn't the bathroom, it was the locker room. That's where, if it was a bathroom, I don't know if I would have been as upset, honestly. If it wasn't pre-known, I don't think I would have been as upset because he didn't get the option. He was told to act normal. Just, they knew it was okay. There's gonna be this student who everybody knew was not a biological male in the locker room. And it took a child to stand up to that. If he didn't say anything, I probably still wouldn't know to this day that it occurred. It would have been brushed under the rug and nobody would have said anything. The opt out, we opt out. You guys talk about all students. I'm all for all students. This was not actually, I don't really care if it was a trans student or not. I don't want a girl, period. Even if she wasn't trans. I don't want a biological girl in the locker room with my son and undressing, period. Or vice versa, or him having to undress in front of her. That is not, I don't care whether it's trans or not. That's besides the point. But when we do this policy, the opting in, opting out, you said that you don't have manpower for it. But I feel like that number on the opting, if you opt into it, would be a smaller amount to manage than the opposite. I could be wrong, but I hear that just because there's this many students doesn't mean that they're not important. I never said they weren't important, but in managing it, it would make more sense the other way because it would be a smaller amount to manage. I mean, that's just my thought process on it. not really sure, but, and prayer. I loved it. I personally thought it was great. And I think that it's awesome to have a higher accountability, whatever that may be. I guess anybody can come up and pray too. I mean, that's it. And I love the board, everybody. So I like the discussion, even though it's lengthy. I do feel like there is progress in
Mhm.
transparency, and that's
Agreed.
awesome. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andy. Anyone else care to take the mic? Okay, at this point, oh, wait, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't realize, yep, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Ruth Redmond. I've been in the school district for over 30 years, and I've listened to everybody. And yeah, I just say, during COVID, we were supposed to follow the science. All the trends thing, why don't we do the same? Oh, then we don't follow the science. Like he said, I hate to say it, it's all about money for the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors. People wake up. Just like if you go to the doctor, oh, they're going to find something wrong with you. They're going to write a prescription. You start out with one thing, you wind up with 3 other cases, okay? I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in 2009. I seen the list. Oh, hydrochloroquine was the easiest, the less effective side effects. I never went back. I'm not on any medication. And I just went to a dentist and he said, oh, he said that was the smartest thing I did because most likely I would have 4 other ailments by now. These medicines are going to cause more problems than, doing this. And again, lying. It's a lie. We're telling our kids lies. You can take all the medicines you want, you can have all the operations you want, but the science doesn't change. When I came in here tonight, I felt like a queen after the day I've had. So if I come in here next school board meeting and I'm dressed like a queen, does that mean, because that's what I'm going to identify as, does that mean everyone will have to bow down to me? And if they don't, I can sue them for discrimination? That's what you're doing. It's ridiculous. It's all common sense. There's a boy, there's a girl. Just have some, just like out there. I just went out there. There's a man, there's a woman, and a family. Okay. And like she said at one school board meeting, somebody might be overweight. They might feel uncomfortable going in there. Everybody has their own personal, things. So it's not just, this transgender. We're spending all this time. People, we have bigger fish to fry, and it's coming real soon. The other big thing, again, all the masks. Again, we were lied to. I was out here protesting about the masks. Okay, well, it turned out I was right. You might as well just use them in the bathroom, save old toilet paper. That's all they're good for. I mean, come on, people. Start using common sense. Again, I was a tomboy when I grew up. Thank God all this stuff wasn't around. And I thank God there wasn't cell phones when I was growing up either. And that's another thing. These kids are all addicted to these phones. They know what they're doing to the kids. And they're just letting it happen because it's all about control. That's all it is. They want our kids so stupid so that they can do anything later. And just like with the drugs, they want them all messed up so that then the government can control it. Like Michelle Obama just said, oh, the government does everything. No, the government does not do everything, and it's not supposed to. Just like global warming, it's a hoax. The world's going to end when God says so, not because of global warming. Wake up, people. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Please state your name.
John Bang, I'm a Manheim resident. First,
That was John Bang.
I congratulate all you newcomers for your hard work. I appreciate your stance on what we're dealing with. Keep up the good work. Say the truth, and you won't be sorry for it. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I love the way you say that.
So,
Motion, second.
so Mr. Letty and Ms. Brennan. Motion, we are adjourned. Right?
I don't know the extent to which.
Yes, please.